welcome to the Zoning Board of Appeals public hearing Thursday, November 18th, 2021. Can I have a motion to open the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
So our first item on the agenda is a pending decision for 88 Hunting Street. However, we are not ready to issue the decision yet. We will be ready by the next public hearing. And we can go on to our first pending case, which is case number 3110, 54 North Main Street, North Main LLC. Is the applicant here to present?
If you're present for this application, please raise your hand. I don't see a hand up, Mark.
And I don't see Elizabeth here, so why don't we motion to adjourn and bring it up later? Can I have a motion to adjourn for the time being, case number 3110?
So moved.
And all in favor?
Second. Aye.
Aye. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Can we hear Luke? Luke, are you muted?
Aye.
Can we hear you?
Yeah, I was. Sorry about that.
Okay. So we have our first new case, case number 3119, 73 Halsey Street, John Gregory and Edward Tawil. And I apologize if I didn't pronounce the last name correctly. Is the applicant here to present with respect to case number 3119?
Yeah, I'll bring him in. John Gregory is present. Okay. You've been updated to panelists. You can go ahead and begin.
Thank you. And it's actually Edward Tawil, but I call him anything. Can I share my screen and we can, okay. Let's see. All right, good. Can everyone see the screen?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can see.
Okay, so this is the turn down that was required to even be here. So I saw the meeting on Tuesday and wanted to make sure I put this first. And here's the property, 73 Halsey Street, just a shot of the front of the house and the back of the house. This is about a half acre on Halsey Street. And this is the survey of the property. And as you can see where I'm putting my mouse, this used to be two properties that we joined. We tore down the house that was decrepit a few years ago and put in a pool. And there used to be, the garage was existing and there was a driveway running the entire length of the property. And we kept this part of the driveway and converted it into a terrace for the pool house, which we converted the garage into a pool house. So what we're talking about today is this area right here, which is a pergola, which is seen here. The left side is a view at an angle of the pergola structure. And this view here shows it from the side yard, which is essentially a transparent structure. So what we're requesting is a variance for essentially this post, which was within, not within 15 feet of the property line. And that's really what this is, the extent of this request.
Do any board members have any questions?
Oh, and I just wanted to add also that I've spoken with the neighbor who lives, well, of course, sent the letters out and everything, but the property owner that's adjacent to the structure itself, Joe Negri, has said he's given explicit approval of what I'm requesting. He actually has a plan that's been approved by the ARB for a new house, and it includes a driveway that runs the length of the property on this end. So it's not really an issue for him, well, at all, but that's essentially the reason. There's going to be a driveway on this side, so it doesn't really cause any issue from his perspective, plus the fact of the tall privet I have on the property that really creates a secluded environment regardless.
I don't really have much of a problem with this. What is the actual count? How many feet is your post?
It's a
What's the ask?
it's a 6 feet variance.
So it's at 9 feet where 15 is required from the
Correct.
northern property line.
Correct.
So it's just one post?
Well, that's the post. The one right here is the one that would be within the variance.
Yeah, so I think given the neighbors' support and given the screening right there, and given the fact that it's coming off of an existing structure, I see no problem with it. It would be a different kettle of fish, right, if there weren't the pool house there. But it really makes the most sense for them to build this off of the existing pool house.
And the existing pool house, as I said, was existing non-conforming as a part of the property we acquired.
And that's complete. Have you finished your project?
Yeah, well, it was a bit of a misunderstanding when we put this up. We thought because the structure itself was existing non-conforming, and because the terrace is part of the existing C of O, and the structure itself is far below the existing ridge line of the existing structure. In addition to the fact that this is kind of like a semi-permanent structure. You see those white brackets? This can essentially be, disassembled. So it's not literally attached structurally to the infrastructure of the pool house itself. It's just attached with those brackets. But because of those considerations, we didn't think a building, it was required to request a building permit, which led to this situation, which is fine. I'm more than happy to request a variance, but I think it's a minimal request given the situation.
Julia, do you have any questions or concerns?
Julia, you're muted.
Is there anyone else in the neighborhood who's here to speak on this application? That's the only question I have.
Jolie, can you find if any other neighbors want to speak to this application?
I don't see any hands up. Oh, wait, there is, yes, one, Paul Hunt.
Can you admit Paul Hunt?
Yeah, he's coming in. All right, Paul, you're in. You can unmute and turn on your camera, please. Mr. Hunt, you're in. Can you unmute and turn on your camera, please? I think we're having a little bit of a problem. He's in. And now, okay, here's someone else I can't. Methatilum is the last name for this application. Okay. Mr. or Mrs. Methatilum, you're in for this application to speak. Unmute, please, and turn on your camera. Okay. I don't know what's going on. They're not. Oh,
Can you hear
there we
me?
go. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, I'm not for that application, ma'am. I'm for a different application.
Okay, so you don't raise your hand and come in on this one. I'm going to take you out, okay?
Yes,
When you
please.
when you hear your application called, then you come in.
Okay, ma'am.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Okay, I don't know if that's the same issue with the other person, so I will bring them out again. All right, I don't think that there's anyone to speak. Chair.
Okay, Julia, did you have any other questions?
No,
I mean, I do. I think it's fine. I mean, look, why don't we have a motion to close for all purposes the public hearing with respect to case number 3119, and we should have a decision by the next meeting. Can I have a second?
Second,
And all in favor?
aye.
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 I just have one question. What do I need to do next to complete the process?
Nothing.
Anything?
You don't have to do anything. You just
You're
have
done.
to receive the decision.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Have a good night.
You too.
Jolie, are we ready to continue?
We are ready to continue. There is, Mr. Hunt has his hand up, but I'm not sure what application he's here for. So I guess we can go ahead and continue with the next one.
The next application is case number 3120 GC Southampton LLC, 84 Fordham Road. Is there an applicant or applicant's representative here to present?
Liz Vale has her hand up, so I'm not sure if she's here for this or because of the previous, but I'll bring.
Let Liz know. I believe she let Liz know that after this case 84 Fordham, we will go back to 54 North Main.
Okay, Liz,
So-
did you hear that? I brought her in, but I can take her out. Hold on one
We'll
moment.
fit it in right after this.
Let me see, is she here for this application?
Yeah, she's the attorney for
She's
this
here
one.
for this application
I
as
am.
well.
Oh, then
Okay, there we go.
Yes.
Okay.
okay, then let's just move on and we'll commence case number 3120.
312. Okay, good evening, board members. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good, thank you. Good evening, Liz Vale, Farrell Fritz, 50 Station Road, Watermill, on behalf of the applicant. If I may share my screen, please. I'm hoping everyone can see my survey. The subject property is located at 84 Fordham Road. It's comprised of 10,090 square feet. And it's located in the R20 zoning district where 20,000 square feet is required. Therefore, the lot is pre-existing non-conforming with respect to lot area. The applicant seeks to renovate the existing 1,714 square foot dwelling, single-story dwelling, by proposing a modest 113 square foot front yard addition and a 78.75 square foot porch addition. Let me just show you where those additions are. So the proposed front yard addition is right here. And it's 113 square feet. And then the porch is just a covered porch that's right here. And that's 78.75 square feet. And therefore we need variances from Village Code section 116-11.1B2 to allow the front yard setback of the addition to be 25.9 feet where 40 feet is required, and to allow the front yard setback of the porch to be the same at 25.9 feet here and here where 40 feet is required. You can see that the pre-existing non-conforming front yard setback for the house, the existing house, is 30.3 feet. So we're actually only coming out an additional 4.4 feet from that setback towards the road. In addition, we're also seeking total side yard relief. Since this lot is pre-existing non-conforming, we do get the benefit of 3/10, 4/10 relief. And we do meet the individual 15-foot side yard requirements, but we need to meet the total side yard requirement of 40 feet, and we only have 32.6 feet where 40 feet is required. Therefore, we need a variance from Village Code section 11.1D for 7.4 feet of relief for the total side yard. Let me just clear this. The applicant did present the application to the ARB on March 22nd, 2021, and received approval on April 4th, 2021. Specifically, the ARB noted, let me just get down to the renderings for you to look at that the ARB looked at. Here are some of the renderings. Specifically, the ARB noted that the architect did a great job. They demonstrated the potential of renovating a ranch house, and they stated it was a really nice redesign of a ranch house and found that the renovation was in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. The existing front yard setback is 30.3 feet. The proposed front yard addition, again, is 113 square feet, and reducing the front yard setback by only 4.4 feet. So we're not expected to interfere with neighboring properties or impact neighboring properties at all. The applicant is proposing to construct two very modest additions to the single-story residence and renovate the basement rather than going up a story. Keeping the residence one story, ensures that the existing character of the residence and its contribution to the character of this neighborhood remains the same. The proposed addition meets all other dimensional setbacks and will not impact neighboring properties or create an undesirable change to the character of the neighborhood. We actually have a letter in support of our application, which I will be submitting to the board from the neighbor at 74 Fordham Road. They did request that the pool equipment on their side of the house be enclosed, which it will be, and then they supported the application. The proposed, finally, a review of the neighborhood indicates that similar variances were issued by this board. So let me just go back to the, this is the aerial. And you can see this is 84 Fordham. And I'll just show you. So first at 74 Fordham, this property right here, we do have their support again in a letter, but they did receive variances from this board to allow the garage to have a front yard setback of 38 feet where 50 feet was required. And then in 2009 obtained further variances to allow the proposed addition in the front of the house to be 29.8 feet from the front yard where 40 feet is required. And they also got rear yard setback relief for a porch. Then at 97 Breeze Lane, which is here, it's sort of diagonally adjacent to our property. This property also received variances from this board. Relief was granted to allow a front yard addition to be 36.6 feet from Breeze Lane and 15.1 feet from the rear yard. And they also obtained variances to allow a garage to be 25.1 feet from Fordham Road over here. I guess this is the garage, where 50 feet is required. And then the board did note in their determination that the upzone from R7.5 to R20 made it impossible to expand the dwelling without a variance. Then finally at 85 Breeze Lane, right here behind the residence towards the east, this property obtained variances from the ZBA for front yard variance of 33 feet where 40 feet is required. So the benefit to the applicant cannot be achieved by any other method except for an area variance request. The lot is undersized at 10,090 square feet, and the width of the lot is only 100 feet, where 120 feet is required. The placement of the existing house on the lot informs the variances requested. The house is almost parallel to the lot lines, but it's slightly slanted to the south, and as a result, the side yard setbacks come in just under on both sides. The existing front yard setback is 30.3 feet where 40 feet is required. Therefore, any addition to the front yard would require a variance from this board. It's impossible to meet the R20 setbacks on this undersized lot, and meeting the front yard setback of 40 feet would cut the existing residence in half since the lot's only 100.88 feet deep. Therefore, there's no other feasible option for the applicant to pursue other than the instant variance application. Therefore, when considering the totality of circumstances, the request is not substantial. Again, we're keeping this one story, so it's in keeping with the character of the community. It won't have an impact on the physical or environmental conditions of the neighborhood. It's a type 2 action pursuant to SECRA. And the alleged difficulty is not self-created. The applicant seeks to maintain the one-story residence, but given the existing undersized lot area, any addition to the residence would require variances. Regardless if this board finds it is self-created, that factor in and of itself is not determinative of the application. So I would just also note one more thing, if I may. I just have to get rid of this, sorry. If you look at the survey, it says proposed house addition, and I don't want the board to think that that's a new structure. That's actually an existing sunroom that has a CO, and it's been part of the property since, and part of the house, you can see on this survey, or I mean on this rendering, it's part of the house, it's part of the square footage. It's been there since at least 1996. Let me just show you an aerial. Here it is. And you can see it's right over here. And it has a CO as well. So that is being converted to as part of the house, but it does not require additional variances. Does the board have any questions? I kind of ran through the 5-part test pretty quickly. I'm sorry.
Do any board members have any questions?
Not
I have a
really.
few questions. When Liz, are you able to scroll down to page DM1?
Sure, is that on here? The rendering?
Below the rendering, so it should be the next page after that, or, oh, is that all you have in yours?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I only presented certain
Okay.
things.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
The package that we have has
The full building
architectural, like,
plans?
floor plans, yeah.
Yeah,
And so the house it's being fully gutted on the inside, which I think means that they have a lot of flexibility in terms of where they pop out. And I don't know if my fellow board members have the same packet that I do, but if you go to A1, which is the proposed floor plan, there's really nothing stopping the block of bedroom 1 and 2, which form the portion coming towards the street, from actually staying flush with the existing line of the house and pushing 4.5 feet into the rear yard. Similarly, to me, given the scope of the demolition that they're proposing, it wouldn't be a burden on them to demolish the sunroom and essentially flip the house over and build the sunroom to the south, I guess.
build the sunroom
Which
over
would-
here.
Yeah, build the sunroom there off the
Well, the
corner of
pool
the
is already
house.
in.
Oh, the pool's in?
Yeah, it's in
Okay.
already. It had a separate application. It didn't require any variances, so I know that would sort of, it was put in based on the existing location of the sunroom.
Okay, well, that's that
Yeah.
then.
Yeah. And we're adding living space to the basement of this house, which is why I was told that the architect actually required this bump out to allow for internal access to the basement as well.
What do you mean?
Rather than pursue anything like going up a story, they were seeking to
Yeah.
create living space, and that's what the architect told me, Mr. Ferdinand.
Yeah. Yeah, you wouldn't have been able to go up on this property without seeking pyramid relief, given the side yard setbacks.
Yep, that's true.
There's also a letter of support from, I believe, the neighbor across the street that we should make sure is part of this file.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So is anyone else wanting to speak on this, do you think?
The one question I do have, and it's really just a thought, because when I was reading the application, there was discussion of how this is better than putting a second story on. And Luke, I hear your point about, it might violate pyramid law anyway, but would the applicant be willing to accept a covenant that we don't increase the height of the house in the future?
I'm not sure. I can certainly bring that back to the applicant and ask them. No, it's, I'm just wondering if that would be something that you could do, that if you could bind future applicants that way. But I'm willing to ask them and see if they have any, if they have a willingness to enter into a covenant to do that. Sure, I can ask them.
Let's hear from neighbors, but otherwise, I think it's an attractive renovation.
Thank you.
I actually think making them sign a covenant is, considering what they're asking for, is kind of a heavy load.
Mhm.
They're not asking for much, and they do have literally, I believe, such a pre-existing non-conforming situation here because of the upzoning, that it's understandable, which I never want to be quoted saying this kind of thing. But given, I think there is a modesty to it, and I hate the dormer window, but that's none of my business on this board.
Here.
So I think going in the basement is kind of a nice idea, because we can't see that. So in a way, I feel like that's what the zoning board does, is when you get a situation where basically you're fit to be tied, you cannot really function in this place except to just reclad it and move back in. So I actually don't object to what I feel are pretty small asks in this case, even though I don't think they're minimal. I think in the proportion of the setbacks, they are more than minimal, but in this case, I don't think it's invasive in any way or impinges on the street. I looked at the lineup of the houses on the street or the neighbors, and the most impacted neighbor, one of them has said it's okay. So I'm not against it. And I wonder if, you know, forever and ever saying they can't build up anyway without getting more variances, which I would hope they wouldn't get. There you go.
That's true. They would have to come back to this board.
Right, and then I would be in the big NO department, so,
There may be a GFA limitation as well.
yeah. So anyway, that's what I
Are
have,
you saying because it would be the expansion of a non-conforming setback anyway, if they tried to go higher?
No, I think for pyramid relief, they would need pyramid because the side yards are so close, I would think.
pyramid would basically, I don't think, what they could build like 10 square feet at the apex. I don't know what they could do, but it doesn't look good to me.
And overall, it's wonderful that there's an applicant who proposes a ranch-style single-story house.
I
that-
couldn't agree more.
So let's see if there's anybody from the audience who would like to be heard with respect to this application. Jolie, can you let us know about that?
Yeah, I don't see anyone with a hand up for this application. Nope, no hand up, Chair.
Okay, Julia, do you have any additional questions or comments?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay, so what should we do? Should we adjourn it for all purposes or close it for all purposes?
You're the chair.
Well, do you want it, would it be okay to adjourn it for all purposes so that we can review the letters that came in and we'll be
And Joyce,
able to have, Joyce catch up as well?
Sure.
Would that be
That's
okay?
fine with me.
Yes.
Liz, would that hold? you guys
Absolutely,
up
we
at
can
all?
adjourn it for all purposes. That's fine, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
I have a
Thank you.
motion to adjourn for all purposes, case number 3120-84 Fordham Road.
So
so
moved.
moved. Second,
And all in favor?
aye.
Hi.
Aye. And
Thank you, board members.
thank you.
But
Liz, you
wait.
want to stay on and we'll go back to 54 North Main?
Thank you so much. We did submit an amended application to this board, reducing the variances requested, but I believe it needs to be renoticed, Mr. Chairman, before we can be heard on it.
I don't know. Do we see that? Did we get that?
No, we didn't see
We
that.
didn't get that, so I don't know what's going on.
Oh, I'm sorry. We submitted an amended application.
Chances are it's not your fault, but we still, we didn't, I have no knowledge of this.
We submitted an amended application to eliminate the relief we're requesting and go forward with the easement plan, which is, I think, was this board's preference. But it would require one more variance for, I believe, the width of the lot at the street line. And it's required to be 20 feet and we have 0 if we just do the easement. So we would require a variance for that. We need to actually notice that. It's never been noticed.
Okay, so we'll hear it in the December public hearing, and we will not be hearing case number 3110 as a pending case, but we'll hear it as a new case in December. Is that?
It would be an amendment of this, but it would just be that variance needs to be renoticed. So I'm asking to adjourn this.
Okay. Can I have
Thank
a
you.
motion to adjourn case number 3110?
So moved.
Second.
Aye.
And all in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Have a good evening.
Have a good evening. So we are going to new case number 3122, Todd Grossman and Tamara Carmichael, 93 David Weitz Lane.
Okay. Let's
Kat, are we
see.
ready? Is the applicant here?
Yeah,
Or
yes,
Representative?
Robert Fischetti is here. I'm going to bring him in. Okay, Mr. Fischetti, you're in.
Hello. Hello,
Hey,
everybody.
Rob.
Robert Fischetti, Vernon Fischetti, 320 Hampton Road, Southampton, attorney for the applicant. I'd like to share my screen if I may.
Mr. Fischetti, have you had a turn down? Has the building department turned down a building permit to you? That's part of the application. I'm trying to get this straight.
No, there
Okay.
was no denial letter.
Yeah, I think you're gonna need that.
So Rob, yeah, in the future, you present a great deal to the board. Just make notice in the application, the preliminary question is whether or not the permit has been refused by the building department. In this case, you check no, but in the future, if you could check yes, that would
Okay, understood.
our process.
Okay, will do. So I have the, hopefully you can see my screen. This is 93 David Weitz Lane. It's a 10,934 square foot corner lot on the corner of David Weitz and Pelletreau. It's in the R 7.5 zone. As you can see, it's 71 feet wide, looking from David Weitz. It's presently improved by a 2-story dwelling and a detached garage. So the current garage is only 5.2 feet north of the south property line. So the proposed garage, while it will need some minor variances, the degree of nonconformity will be much less. Some of the difficulty created here was created by the fact that the house is not parallel to the street line. So as you'll see in a moment when I bring up the site plan, some of the more minor variances are just necessitated by that change in angles. So if you see here on starting with the detached garage, we fitted into the setbacks as a 479.3 square foot detached garage. The variance is to put it at 37 feet instead of the required 40, and that, as you can see, is just due to keep the line from the house, to keep everything parallel. And then moving over to the pool house, that is a 215.6 square foot pool house, requiring a 30.4 foot variance where 40 feet is required. And then we have the, I'm sorry, there was a repetition. So then we have the pool at 540 square foot pool, and that's a 32.8 foot setback where 40 is required from the street. And then on the south side, 14.7 where 20 feet is required. So obviously, as like any other corner lot, this property is sort of sandwiched here as far as their ability to build as of right. I think the architect did a good job of sort of color coding here, so you could see the very narrow lane of as of right building area in the back. I don't think there's really any undesirable change to the character of the neighborhood. The neighborhood is, as you can see, there are other buildings close to the property line, just to the south at 87. David Weitz, the garage is about anywhere between 0 and 4 feet off the line. 81 David Weitz, a little further south, same thing, about 2 foot setback. I'm gonna take you just down the street to 106 Pulaski here. About 6 years ago, there was a very similar application before the board for 106 Pulaski, also about a 10,000 plus square foot lot on a corner street, and that received a variance for a pool at 20.6, and then the garage at 22.7, and that was back in 2014. Pretty similar to this, really just necessitated by the corner lot setup. The applicant here tried to, they obviously didn't center it right on the house. That would have brought it very close to the street, but they tried to keep the lines from the house and the garage and the pool and the pool house and everything as consistent as they could. I think relatively speaking, most of the variances are quite minor, just a couple of feet here and there. And then of course the setbacks from the street are the more significant ones. But all in all, not a significant change to the neighborhood overall, as there are other non-conforming structures in the neighborhood. It's a type 2 action, no adverse impact expected. The difficulty is not self-created because the corner lot, somewhat narrow corner lot. And really, as you can see from the sort of narrow as of right area, this really couldn't be accomplished without a variance. I did not get any response from any of the neighbors. And I think that's everything I have, unless you have any questions or comments or.
Is there no other way to get that pool house? I think it's substantial, the pool and the pool house.
The pool is 18 feet wide. It's not not even a full 20 by 40.
So
It was
mean-
tried to, to fit in with as little variance as possible. And then of course the pool house, put at, at the end.
I don't even see that what you're saying about straightening it out. From my perspective, I'm not getting that read. And then you're telling me, well, you don't
Well,
want to
so-
center it on the house. But if you did center it on the house, would that improve would that lessen what you're requesting?
No, if you centered it on the house, you would be so close to the road, it would
No,
be
but
much
if you
more-
straightened it out, if you moved it north, I guess, a little, the east side of the pool and pool house?
Oh, and change, yeah, that's, I mean, that is part of the sort of the design end of things, where they were trying to keep the lines of the house and the pool and everything, so everything was not.
Yeah, I just don't see the lines that you're telling me about. To
Well,
me,
so
the
this is parallel with this here.
It isn't. Is it? Doesn't, from
I
my eye,
believe
it
that was
doesn't
their
look
intention.
parallel. I'm not gonna argue with you.
It's not parallel with the street, but
It's a
with each other.
Oh, well, okay, well,
Otherwise, I think when you look out the back of the house, the pool would be sort of jagged to the side, and then same with the garage. And that's why I say those are just minor, just as you can see, the garage is just sort of twisted to line up with this stuff, which just requires that small corner variance.
I'm more concerned about the pool and the pool house. The garage, I could say would be minimal, but the other, I feel like there could be other ways to do. It might not be the same width of the pool, but it would still be a pool. I don't know.
We're
I'm
less
not-
substantial than the 106 Pulaski at 20.6.
You know what? That was a long time ago. We're talking about now, so I'm not going in that direction, and I don't, you know.
I understand. I didn't mean it's precedent, but I understand.
Rob, what would be helpful is to see what your building envelope is, what you're working with.
Yes.
Well, that's here. The red is the front yard setback. The orange here is the side yard.
So when
or
I asked
street,
you, could you
40 feet
move
from the
it?
street. I'm sorry?
You could have moved it to where I said. Yes? The pool in the pool house. If the building envelope is in the red, which is that
Yes, well,
line,
here is this orange line is the 40 feet from the street.
yeah?
This red is the principal setback, but this accessory is.
Oh, there.
Yeah, that's the accessory
Oh.
structure setback from the street. So
Well, it
that's
would have been nice to have this all map labeled for us.
So then, Rob, where's the rear yard setback?
the required rear yard. We have it right on here.
It's in blue, just below the garage, right there.
Yes, yeah, the 10-foot accessory setback. We meet that. It's just the.
Well, but then why, I think this might be part of Susan's point, slide that back.
Oh, sorry.
Why aren't you just sliding the pool house to the west,
In line with the garage.
in line with the garage and out of the
Wouldn't that
front yard
require-
setback?
Wouldn't, if it was to the west, wouldn't that still be requiring the same street setback?
That's what I'm trying to see. If you're
Right,
saying
like if I took this and went this way, it's still gonna be the same
The other
distance from
way.
the street.
That
the other way
down.
down to where you have a 10-foot setback.
Oh, down here, well, yeah, they were trying to line it up with the pool, so it wasn't jagged. So you're saying
Hey, Rob,
put it like down here?
Yeah, thank you.
I actually think that Jason, the architect, I really understand what he did by lining it up with the house, making it parallel to the house. I think that is the right move. If you turned it parallel to the property lines, yeah, maybe you'd be asking for slightly less relief, but the property would never really read correctly. So I think he did the right thing here. Corner lots are notoriously difficult, especially a lot of this dimension and proportion. I wonder, is Jason here tonight to talk a little bit about it? Because he may have like a real handle on the setback lines.
Unfortunately, he had a conflicting appointment, so he couldn't make it tonight. If he needs to, he can make the next meeting, but he just unfortunately had a conflict tonight.
Yeah, I think he did the best he could with a very, very restrictive lot. I probably would have done the same thing.
But Luke, you know, our job is really the zoning, and if the pool were to be made smaller, for instance, that might
Mhm.
change how much of a variance they're asking for. There are no, some of them are minimal, but this is 4 or 5 variances on one small property, and that alarms me.
I think that what they could have done is turned the pool and the pool house 90 degrees, right? And you could get the pool house into a spot that doesn't require a variance, but that would mean that you were asking for much larger variance for the area of pool. Now, like, are we just looking at the two-dimensional survey, or are we thinking about what's built up and what's in the ground on the property? You know, so that could be a consideration for them as well, to get the building that rises out of the ground to need no variances. But like I said, more pool would be in that front yard on Pelletreau.
No, Luke, what I'm asking is, why don't we just work with the building envelope? In other words, what is the applicant's reason for not working within the building envelope? If what I'm seeing here is that you have a 10-foot setback.
No, it was the pool has. So for the
Yeah, don't get fooled by the red line. That's the principal structure setback line. The accessory setback line is the two yellow lines. Rob, move your cursor to the right, that line, and then move your cursor right down. That line, that's his buildable envelope for accessory structures. It's probably only 9 feet wide.
Well, there could be a 10-foot lap pool. I mean, I just feel like this is a pretty big thing. I'm not, and
No,
you know, architecturally
interrupt
made,
anybody,
we're
but I don't
doing
wanna lose-
zoning.
I don't want to lose the thread. It says rear setback for accessory structure. And you have the proposed garage, is that 10 feet back?
Yes.
So my question is, why isn't that the line for the pool house and the pool?
Well, the pool has to meet the 20-foot pool setback. And then the pool house was just tried to be lined up with the pool and the patio. So the pool is kept to this, the 20-foot, you know, specialized setback for pools, which, you know, we still need relief from, because between the 40-foot street accessory setback and the 20-foot pool setback, like Mr. Farron said, it's very small, you know, from this yellow line to this yellow line. Why the pool house ended up here was just a product of trying to, you know, make it, you know, continue off of the patio and off the pool to line everything up.
So Rob, what you're suggesting is, you know, let's separate ourselves momentarily from the aesthetics. You could fit the pool house within setbacks, because we're saying that the pool house has a 10-foot rear yard setback.
Well, this would be side yard, but yes, it has a 10-foot side yard setback.
Well, that's my question. So you chose your rear yard. Well, okay, then.
I think the rear yard was chosen back, you know, because the house is existing. So the house is on David Weitz. So I think this is, I mean, either way, it's whether you call it rear or side, it's the same 10-foot accessory setback.
Okay. So then why were you confusing it?
I don't think I'm following you. we
Why
meet the
can't you-
accessory.
Why can't you, just apart from aesthetics, why can't you slide the pool house
Mhm.
where the garage is so that it conforms with your setbacks?
Oh, so just put the pool house like here.
I'm not the architect. What I like to start with is, what's your building envelope and why can't you work within the building envelope? And it feels here like you gave not as much priority or significance to the building envelope. And instead you said, what would be the best from an architectural point of view? And let's see if we can have that accepted. And that's contrary to what we see as our role. We see our role as, why can't you stay within the building envelope? Because it's not insignificant, your building envelope for a pool house at any rate.
Right, I understand. I mean, I think there definitely are other situations before this board where, you know, certain variances, while in and of themselves are not required, you know, flow from the other improvements. This obviously still has to go to the ARB, which, you know, they may have some input on the layout as a whole and how how that falls. But I mean, I'll speak to the architect and the applicant about that. You know, I understand your point.
I mean, our point really, just as far as our standards go, is whether the requested area variance is substantial and whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance. And so that's when we start to talk about, what's your building envelope and why can't you work within the building envelope?
I understand. I mean, I think the part of the pool house that's encroaching is only like, we're only talking about like 100 square feet.
Yeah, but we are also talking about a request of 5 variances, and the totality of that is substantial.
Understood.
And we're repeatedly asking the same question, which is, could there be alterations to this plan that would fit into the building envelope? And I think you've given us our short-term answer, which is that we need to hear from the architect perhaps at our next meeting.
Really?
That's fair.
I am with Mark in saying that it's important to me that perhaps this could be worked out so that it fits in the building envelope. The garage for 3 feet or whatever that is, that doesn't, if that were, that would be acceptable, but this is a lot of variances having to do with the pool house and the pool. I realize that it's a corner lot, but that's what it is. So things could be, I would be interested in seeing if the applicant can work out a way to fit to get, if they want, a pool and a pool house in the garage in the building envelope before we move forward.
Susan, can I show you a sketch?
That's not, no, thank you. We really cannot be redoing their house. This is not, Mark can take over, but
Yeah, Robert, we're not trying to design it and reach a consensus here. We're just relaying to you that the initial impression of this plan is that it did not respect enough the building envelope, and it did not provide enough demonstration that they couldn't accomplish their benefits by working closer within the building envelope. Perhaps the pool does need to be 16 feet wide, 18, you know. Yes.
Well, the pool, I
know-
understand. I mean, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off.
go ahead.
So the pool house, if we could just separate the pool for a second. So the pool house, I understand. I'll speak to the applicant and architect, and we'll put our heads together to see how we can, to sharpen that up. The pool, I mean, I think it definitely would require some variance. I mean, I'm sure any pool variance that comes before you, they could always build a 5-foot wide pool, but pool variances are granted to provide a somewhat conventional size pool. So I'll talk to the applicant and the architect about the size of the pool too, but I think that there is going to be some relief required for the pool. I just don't think it would be able to fit within those 2 yellow lines.
And we see that as well, Robin. It's probably not going to fit, but we are trying to suggest to you to minimize the relief requested.
Understood. Okay.
So is there anybody from the audience, Jolie, who would like to be heard?
Is there anyone here for this application that would like to speak? Anyone from the public? Please raise your hand. No, I don't see any hands.
Okay, so why don't we motion to adjourn this application for all purposes? And Rob, we'll have another look at the next public hearing.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
So moved.
And all in favor of adjourning for all purposes?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we'll move on to our next new case, which would be 199 Cooper's Neck Lane, case number 3121. Jolie, is
Okay.
the applicant here to present, or the applicant's representative?
Yes, Peter De Pasquale is coming in. Mr. De Pasquale, you're in. You can turn on your camera and unmute, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm going to share my screen. Hi, my name is Pete De Pasquale, the architect who's been working on 199 Cooper's Neck Lane. I'm representing the owner tonight. We are here to discuss a variance for a location of a tennis court on this historic property. It is a 3-acre lot. It's a big piece of property. When this building was built in 1910, the zoning was quite different. The property lines were different. And in fact, Meadowmere Lane did not exist. So the sort of the historic circumstances of this house, because of its age, because of its importance, and because things have changed over time, the neighborhood has changed around it. You can see here that the historic district actually is, runs down the middle of Cooper's Neck Lane, but was defined to grab this property, with the intent that there's going to be some interpretation required in making changes to this property. The house was purchased about 2 years ago by the current owner. Prior to that, it sat empty for 5 years. There was an attempt to renovate the house. Because it's a challenging house and a challenging site, it had been, before that sale 7 years ago, had been deemed not economically viable. There was no basement due to the high water table. There was no garage, no tennis court. The entire interior was gutted. There was a meticulous renovation over the course of the last 2 years. And the important note here is that historically, the entrance to the building, the front facade is here. This is that entry facade. This is undeniably the front door of the house and the property. The streets have changed over time, but the front of the house is not. By virtue of this renovation, to replace every single window, to add, modern day amenities like a garage, there's a huge investment of energy and time, and the restoration has the building poised to live 100 additional years, as opposed to being torn down or being empty or sort of destroyed in the way that it had through a number of previous renovations and partial demolitions. With respect to the neighborhood, there were previously 2 accessory structures between the house and Cooper's Neck Lane. Due to sort of, the noisy nature of pools, and access and common sense, the pool was moved over here away from Cooper's Neck Lane. This is one of many sort of common sense decisions that have been made in the life of this project. Additionally, even since the The tennis court is not a traditional length. It's been shortened from a traditional 120-foot long court to save a significant copper beech tree that is here. At the street line, there was a double hedge that was planted, and there's a curve here. It will pop up here in a second. That was inscribed to match a similar hedge line across the street. This was to give back to the intersection of Meadowmere and Cooper's Neck Lane. The tennis court, we provided information on the tennis court design. It's sunken 3 feet. It's behind 2 hedges on the street, and there's another series of plantings against the court. This court will not be visible from Cooper's Neck Lane, and it will not be visible from any neighboring structure. Fully planted and sunken 3 feet. The nearest residence from the closest corner of the court is over 210 feet away, and the nearest accessory structure on a neighboring property is over 130 feet away. We have spoke to neighbors of this property, with which it shares a property line, and they have supplied a letter of support. We've also spoken to this neighbor, and they have expressed their support. There have been letters of objection to this court, which has been required to make this property viable. And we just want to be clear about the intentions of the owner here. The owner has lived in Southampton Village for 50 years, renovated houses, lived in them. In Bridgehampton, he moved a historic house he did not own that was under the threat of demolition. It was the oldest built house in Bridgehampton, 1679. The owner funded the restoration of the War Memorial in Southampton Village. And then this owner is a developer, and there have been accusations that this is basically trying to drive up the value of this property. Just want it to be noted that all proceeds from the sale of this house are going to a scholarship program for first-generation students at the University of Virginia. The owner received a similar scholarship when he went to college, and his intent is to pay it forward. The owner is very proud of this, and he's happy to invite and talk to anyone who takes any issue with this, but ultimately is not seen as having any impact on the neighborhood. Does the board have any comments or questions?
Mark, you're muted.
Sorry. Do any board members have any questions or comments? Peter, this application seems familiar.
That's right.
Didn't we hear this application previously?
There was a previous application, and the project, the proposal was withdrawn before an official decision was made.
And that was a year ago, is that correct?
That sounds right, yeah. Yeah, that's right, December of 2020.
Are there any significant differences between that proposal and this proposal?
So, two changes, and we wanted to be clear about the extent. So there was a revised landscape proposal where the court was shortened 8 feet for the health of this tree, which we think is visible and significant to the nature of Cooper's Neck Lane. So the court was shortened from what we saw before. Here, we've provided fencing around the two ends, and then we've shrouded that fencing with plantings on the outside. And then there's also a double hedge here on the back. So it's this revised landscape plan and shortening of the court to deal with previous concerns of impact on the street.
Did the pool receive a variance at one time?
Excuse me?
Did the pool receive a variance at one time? Because isn't that in the front yard on on the other street?
No,
No,
actually,
so-
because it's the same distance as the garage,
Front yard is defined by the edge of the garage.
Technically, okay, understood.
But otherwise, the pool does satisfy the front yard setback.
Yes.
That's right. It's behind the leading edge here.
How far is the tennis court from Cooper's?
35 feet from the
And-
property line,
Right, I'm sorry, from the property line. But so that hasn't changed since the last time we were hearing this?
That has not changed.
We could move it.
I would, as far as the board's concerned, I would like to have a motion that we incorporate all of the prior discussions with respect to the last time we heard this into this record. Can I have that motion, or can I have a second on that motion? And Jeff,
Second.
did I state that clearly enough?
Yes,
Okay, so it's a motion to incorporate all prior discussions and materials from the prior time that we heard this for purposes of this conversation and application as well. And a second,
Second,
and all in favor?
aye.
Aye. Luke, did you vote?
Aye.
And Susan, you voted?
I did, yes.
Okay, so do any board members have any other questions, concerns, comments?
I think, Mark, I'd like to hear if there's any neighbors that want to speak, and then can we come back and ask more questions?
Sure. Julia,
Or
are there
make
some
comments?
neighbors?
Okay.
Julia, are there neighbors that would like to speak to this?
yes, it looks like there is. A moment. Peter Campbell is coming in.
Good evening, everyone. Peter Campbell, 210 Cooper's Neck Lane. I live directly across the road from the proposed tennis court. I wanted to just start by, I apologize if this is not the correct forum for this question, and it's already been touched on. I'm trying to understand how an application that was unanimously voted against in the public hearing on the 8th of December received strong condemnation from all the members of the board. A written decision was drafted, and it was then able to be withdrawn by the applicant before it was rubber stamped in the following meeting, only to be resubmitted 10 months later with no substantive changes being made. I just think that this is, it's kind of highly disrespectful to this processes and standards that the ZBA and its members are trying to uphold. Furthermore, the neighbors have now been forced to rewrite letters to defend their position, and once again appear before the ZBA members who are now giving up their valuable time on this. It would be helpful to all of us neighbors if somebody from the board could explain what is preventing from the applicant from withdrawing this application once again, only to further draw out this charade.
Peter, I mean, we did not get a chance to vote on it, but you're
I
correct.
apologize if I don't know the correct terminology, but there was a verbal vote.
It was in a work session, I think, and then we had hoped to go to a written decision, and it was pulled over Christmas.
Okay,
But
I understand.
You're right, Peter. It's more semantics than anything else.
And Mr. Campbell,
To vote against it.
we were as surprised as you were, I believe, that it was not on our agenda when we came back after the new year of 2021.
Okay, if you don't mind, I have just one or two other things to say. The negative impacts on the neighbors, on us personally as neighbors and the greater neighborhood were thoroughly presented last year. And again, I believe you have a number of letters from all of the neighbors who are impacted. And the issue that I see is that only one person stands to benefit from this relief. And for one reason, and that's really to maximize the profits of the sale of this property. Former ZBA member Kevin Gadara said last year in the meeting that his only argument is that he wants it because he wants it. And I believe that we should not be allowing developers to determine the landscape and character of our village, trying to extract the most economic value by shoehorning in as many amenities and add-ons as possible. For us, the value of Southampton, in particular Cooper's Neck Lane, is the absence of these eyesores. There are no tennis courts on Cooper's Neck Lane. And as ZBA member and former ARB chair, Susan Stevenson said in last year's hearing, nor should there be. The applicant argues that he should be given this relief as a reward for restoring this historic home. I would argue that if he cares as much as he says, then he would appreciate that there is no place for a tennis court on the street. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
I believe if we
May I make a
put all the
comment?
documents in from the previous,
May I make a comment?
Well, let's Peter, we'll get back to you. Let's let any neighbors who want to speak to it, but if you could just hold your comments to the end, is that okay, Peter?
Sure.
Okay, are there any other public comments on this application? There's no other hands up, Chair.
Yeah, there were a number of letters submitted into the file, but go ahead, Peter.
well, isn't Bernard Carl, he wrote a letter. He's in the attendees, or maybe he doesn't want to speak.
He's the owner of the property at which Peter Campbell lives.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I don't see any hand up. If anyone would like to speak regarding this application for 199 Cooper's Neck Lane, raise your hand, please. No hands are going up.
Okay, Peter, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, just a couple of comments. I think that wanting a tennis court on a property of this size in Southampton Village is not unreasonable. I don't think that this is like inconsistent with similar properties. And I think that you look no further than across the street where that property has 9 accessory buildings, one of which is 6 feet from the street, is visible at all times, and has lights onto the street at night. The idea of a sunken landscape feature that's not visible from the street having a greater impact than that visible residence on the street, I think is not, this will have a far lesser impact than that. And then there were a series of letters that were received by the board prior. I encourage the board to look at those because they were clearly a form letter with the same text on each letter. It has different addresses and different owners and different signatures, but this was a coordinated effort to pick on this proposal.
Peter, I would say, I mean, I read several letters that all seemed very, particular and individualistic and not a form at all. But you might be referring to some other letters, but the letters that I've recently received. There were 4 on file. Two match the text exactly. They're on the same letterhead. There's a third one for someone who is not a neighbor. And then the 4th one that was received with this recent submission was from the same people as the form letter before. So this is primarily about the perceived impact of this from the person across the street.
Well, I don't think we should disparage the people the public. I don't want to be involved in this way. I don't think that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine for neighbors to coordinate their efforts, and form letters are fine too. They're signing their name to it. They're signaling their agreement with the crux of the letters. So, neighbors are allowed to coordinate and
yeah. And for this
and the house across
proposal,
the street that you're referring to, Peter, that's 6 feet from the property line, is very, very charming. And
I agree that the idiosyncrasies and the inconsistencies of relationships of houses to the street is the character of Southampton Village.
Yeah. But some of the letters that were submitted raised a concern that this would set a bad precedent for front yard tennis courts on the street, right? And I took a little look at the map today take a look at this, you guys, and I'm happy to be fact checked on anything here because I am pulling street addresses off of Google. So there are 12 properties on Cooper's Neck. I'm not counting the property on the southeast corner of Cooper's
Luke, are
Neck
you
and
able to
Great
share this
Plains.
with us?
I only wrote it down.
Okay, go ahead.
I mean, I can.
We have
Not including the house on the corner of Great Plains and Cooper's Neck, not including the applicant property, and not including the farm. We have 12 properties on the street. Of the 12 homes, 7 already have tennis courts. Okay, so of the 5 remaining properties, 3 appear, to my eye at least, to be too small to meet lot coverage requirements to have tennis courts. Of the 2 remaining homes, which I think are 255 Cooper's Neck and 38 Cooper's Neck. Again, I could be wrong on the addresses, but of the 2 remaining homes, both properties are large enough to accommodate a tennis court without a variance. So to me, this doesn't necessarily set any sort of precedent on the street. Everybody's already accommodated. There were also some comments about noise, the noise of tennis courts. I run down the street all the time in the warmer months. I think you'd be very, very surprised how much traffic this street has. The noise created by the cars, the noise by hedge clippers, noise from lawnmowers, the noise from everyone else's tennis courts, kids selling lemonade out there. I don't agree that a tennis court creates a noise nuisance. I do think that the homeowner should be commended for saving this property. Had he applied to the Architectural Review Board for a demolition permit, he likely would have been denied. Had it been approved, we'd be looking at a massive house right on Cooper's Neck with probably 2 curb cuts to accommodate a parking forecourt on Cooper's on the street. I think a new house would have drastically changed the character of the neighborhood far more than the sunken tennis court does. And, you know, I don't know if rewarded is the right word, but I think the homeowner should be commended for saving a piece of Southampton Village history. It's a beautiful home. Does he need every amenity under the sun? I don't know. You know, it is an active listing, right? So maybe the end user should come back and apply for a tennis court if they are tennis players. But I'm not convinced by the letters of dissent that this is tragedy for the neighborhood.
So let's look, as a board, let's look at the other standards, or let's, you know, our mandate is to consider as one of the criterion, is the requested area variance substantial? This variance is 35 feet from the front yard where 90 feet is required. So would we agree that the variance requested is substantial when it's, when it's 55 feet? So there's really no, you know, we're not close to what the setback is supposed to be. I mean, everybody should make their own, you know, determination, but I did want to highlight for everybody that that's one of the 5 criterion that we're supposed to look at. Is the requested area variance substantial? And this is 35 feet where 90 feet is required.
I agree with you, Mr. Chairman. I also think, I don't want to hear, I mean, we're supposed to deal with zoning and with the rules, the building envelope, and what's allowed. And I'm trying to stay very much on course with these applications.
And
So
per
your comments.
And per the village code, a variance may be issued for the repair or rehabilitation of historic structures.
Yes.
You're not rehabilitated. It's rehabilitated.
Oh, of course, this has been rehabilitated.
Not rehabilitating the historic structure.
It's important. It's essential to the economic viability of the project. Otherwise, it will sit empty.
Why are you saying
We're
that?
not in
You
the
don't
real
think-
estate business.
But why are
No,
you
but
saying
I'm
that?
saying it would otherwise be empty. The house sat empty for 5 years. It was a detriment to the community.
I think that you're presupposing a lot of things. The market was different then. We're not in the real estate business. This house would probably never have been allowed to be torn down. I could probably say that.
Half of the
And I,
original house
Mr.
was
I
already
was-
torn down.
What?
Yeah,
It had no demo.
yeah, the original house was an L shape. It was in the 1980s, half of it was torn down.
Fine, but okay, I was on the ARB. I'm not on it anymore. So who knows what they would do?
Let's keep going with the 5 points.
Okay, so whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance. You know, one of the things just to consider, and everybody will make their own determination as to where they come out. When I looked at this plan, I did see the addition of the tennis court as an afterthought. In other words, when the site plan was being developed, I am not convinced that enough thought had been given to the necessity, if the applicant thought it was a necessity, to perhaps locate the tennis court somewhere else. There is a relatively substantial building envelope here.
There is no other viable location for the court.
What is viable?
I mean, you had the northern portion of the property where you
Due
could
to
have,
the water table, all of the septic systems could only exist in this site right here. And the front door is right there. It's impossible to fit a court there.
Can't do a north-south.
Peter, just highlight for everybody where the leaching pools are, because I can see them there over your
Leaching
cursor.
pools are
Yeah.
here,
Yeah, and then to the right.
and they're here, and this is
Right.
the front door.
Yes.
The backyard is the front of the property.
Peter, are you suggesting that at one point you did consider locating the tennis court in that northern quadrant, but
No, we knew that it would not be possible to have a court there because this was the only place to put the sanitary system
And it's
due to the water table,
the front of the
and it's the
building.
front of the building.
You have 3 front yards. And
just, that was, Luke, that was one of the criteria there.
it's not the front of the building.
And of course, probably the primary criterion, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district.
Good one.
I mean, I would say that since the neighbors have highlighted this, there are
It's the only one.
disturbances created by tennis courts in front yards that have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood. But again, it's every board member's responsibility to evaluate these criterion on their own. I would say that there is a substantial adverse effect on the general neighborhood by having a tennis court 35 feet from the front yard.
What is
Despite
that
it being,
effect?
Noise. I mean, I play tennis 3 times a week. I know what the commotion of a tennis court in a front yard is.
Only have a buyer who has children.
Yeah, I'm not
We
convinced
cannot-
relative to the noise on that street. I don't think it's anything anybody is going to hear. I mean, cars, the street is surprisingly busy in the summer with people trying to get to Cooper's Beach.
And
There's
the
so
court
much
is-
road noise there.
The court is for very occasional use. At
It,
certain times of year, certain times of day. This is not a camp or a court or a sort of structure. There's not, it's a court in Southampton. And it's not,
Peter, is the
going to
court
be late.
proposing to have any sort of lighting, night lights, night
No.
play?
no.
that's illegal in the village.
Our landscape plan is intended to make the court not visible. And if there are suggestions or proposals, we think it is not visible from here. If there are recommendations for what else we could do to make it less visible, I'd imagine the applicant would be open to it.
And we don't want-
You can't see Cooper's Neck Lane from the inside of the site, so I don't think you can see this from the outside.
There'll be times of year where the privet is a little thinner.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, anyway, are there any other questions from board members, or we can close this and then we can deliberate and balance our factors and come up with a decision for you, Peter? But for right now, can I have a motion to close the hearing with respect to 199 Cooper's Neck Lane, case number 3121 for decision?
So moved.
Second,
And all in favor?
Aye.
aye.
And aye. So that would be unanimous. Okay, we'll deliberate our next work session, Peter, and we'll be back to you. Okay, we're moving on to case number 3117, 104 Post Crossing.
Okay.
Is the applicant or their
Yes.
representative here?
Yes. Linda Riley is coming in. And I see a hand for Bernard Carl. Is that part of this application?
If he wants us to go back, I'm sorry, Bernard Carl may be for 199 Cooper's Neck Lane.
Definitely is.
And I think we might have missed him. So
His hand wasn't up previously, but it is now. So would you like me to bring him in?
I've
very
a
quick-
motion temporarily, maybe Peter is still around, to reopen 199 Cooper's Neck Lane, case number 3121, in case a neighbor would like to speak to the application.
I
So
see
moved.
Peter. I see Peter. I can bring him back in.
Thank you.
So I can make a motion to open the application for 199 Cooper's Neck Lane.
I'll second.
Aye.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Luke?
Aye.
Okay,
Linda will be back to you.
sorry, Linda.
Mr. Carl, you're in. You need to unmute and turn on your camera, please.
I don't know.
You're here. We can hear you.
Thank you. I'm afraid I may not be quite as technologically competent as the rest of you, but I will do the best I can. I would, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Let me make three brief points. I would point out first that the lot in question is very close to the minimum lot size for the historic area in which it's located. And I think what we have is a developer trying to cram as many amenities as he can into a historic property to maximize its value, even though he knew when he purchased the property that there were restrictions that might reduce the number of amenities available on the property. So I think the protestations of good faith may deserve a little more scrutiny. The second issue I would like to note is that the applicant has suggested that tennis courts are not particularly intrusive, and we do have a tennis court in our property. Our property is almost 3 times the size of the one that you are considering. It is at the very end of the property next to a pond very far from any neighbor. And I think there's quite a bit of difference between the other tennis courts of the property, which are not close to the street, and what is being proposed. What is being proposed is really a very significant change in the character of the street. We happen to, like the applicant, have a house that is perpendicular to the street. And the precedent that is being asked for by the applicant would be one that we could move our tennis court to 35 feet from the street and use the part of the property furthest away from the street from other uses. Were we to do so, I would be readily willing to admit that it would have a significant impact on the quality of the street, which is both historic and more agricultural, probably than most areas of the village. And I think changing that character would be a significant impact. Third, I would like to say that the applicant did apply in December of 2020 for exactly the same variance. And I would encourage all the members of the board to review that hearing, in which unanimously there was condemnation of the proposal. And the only change between that application and this application is the applicants reduced the length of the tennis court by 8 feet. And actually the length of the tennis court was not the variance he was seeking. So the change is utterly irrelevant. So in effect, nothing has changed that is of consequence to this particular board from the one that was unanimously rejected in a tentative vote about 10 months ago. As to the comments on noise, I have lived in this property for 20 years. It is in fact a very quiet property, which is one of the reasons that I acquired it. It is one of the values that all of the neighbors in the street enjoy on this property. And the notion of having tennis courts, and I do have one at the rear of my property nearest to the Cooper's Neck Pond, it is noisy. And to have that noise over weekends in the season will affect the property values of the surrounding neighbors, and we are the closest neighbor. The arguments that somehow the applicant has saved a historic property is a little bit fatuous, given that the value of that property is millions of dollars. And what the applicant is actually trying to do is not save the property, but increase the value of the property from millions to many millions of dollars. The fact that he might be denied that profit is hardly a hardship. Finally, I would like to say that one of the issues here is the issue of whether there were alternatives. The applicant clearly had alternatives. One of the alternatives was to place the tennis court in what would have been, I believe, the northwest corner of the property, which would be adjacent mostly to an agricultural area. It would not have affected the street and the sort of culture of the street, as it were. It would not have affected the neighbors, but the applicant chose to go forward with putting a greenhouse in that area for what were clearly aesthetic reasons, and to increase the value in the property instead of placing the tennis court there further away from the street and the neighbors. He's made that choice. I would encourage the board to tell him he's made the choice and he should live with it. So for all of the reasons that I've indicated, and I would strongly suggest the board reject the application. Now, simply to clarify one issue. The property across the street from this is 210 to 216 Cooper's Neck Lane. My wife and I have lived at 216 Cooper's Neck Lane for 3 decades. And we have tried very hard to preserve the quasi-agricultural character of what historically was known as Little Orchard, a property built by the owner of the orchard on Hill Street as a wedding gift for his daughter. And one of the things we've tried to preserve is the agricultural or quasi-agricultural feeling of that property. What the applicant is suggesting is something that would have a significant effect on that admittedly feel to the property, which is something that is and not mathematically provable. The other person who has approved, who has objected to the changes is Peter Campbell. Peter Campbell is my son-in-law. He has lived in a cottage on our property for many, many years with my daughter and their children. While not legally deeded to him, it is effectively my son-in-law's and my daughter's property. And I would encourage you to consider his objections independently of mine, and they are substantively different because he has a different perspective on this problem. For him, the perspective is having to live across from the tennis court. From my perspective, it is a broader concern, which is a concern about changing the character of our street, which I think is in many ways very unique in the Estate District. And it is a quality that I would hope you would appreciate and try to preserve. So with that, I will close my remarks, which have probably gone on too long and may not have been exactly consistent with your mandate, but I would hope there are issues that you would consider. So thank you all.
No, thank you.
Do you want me to make a motion to close the meeting now?
Go ahead.
Could I ask a question to Mr. Carl?
Of course.
1 second, I just took him out. I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Let me bring him back in. Mr. Carl, you're back in. Could you please unmute and turn on your camera?
We have one question. We have one question. for
Mr.
you.
Carl,
Sorry
I
about that.
appreciate your,
I hope
I
you
appreciate
I
the
hope I
time you
didn't-
took. And no, it's fine. I appreciate it. My question to you is you seem to have used the term developer as a pejorative. And I wonder if this property were an end user, would you have a different opinion on the tennis court?
I would not have, can you hear me?
I
Yes,
can hear you.
Thank you. I would not have a different view about the owner. Had an owner initially sought this application, I think the dialogue between the owner and the neighbors would have been very different. And I think had that been the nature of the application, perhaps a different view as to the greenhouse versus the tennis court versus the meadow lane front yard might have been very different. But we were all deprived of the opportunity to have that discussion by two things. First, that it is not the owner who made the application. And secondly, that the probability or requirement for a tennis court was not introduced into the process when the initial site plan was proffered to the board, deprived us all of that opportunity.
But Mr. Carl, don't worry about your response to it. As a board, we do not take into consideration whether it is a developer or an end user. We look at the impact on the neighborhood relative to the benefit to the applicant, and we have our own, guidelines. So, I appreciate the question and having open dialogue, but it doesn't matter to our deliberations how you would have reacted differently or not differently. So please, you don't.
Yeah.
You don't.
And
have to
I think
elaborate on that.
you're maybe saying the same thing as me, Mark, more eloquently. And my point was that whether he's a developer or not is not really germane to the conversation. The other question I would have though is, you said you have a tennis court on your property. Mr. Campbell, who spoke earlier, how much further away is that tennis court than the one that's proposed? What I'm driving at is that I don't really believe that the noise concern is that much of an issue.
Well, let me answer both questions. I understand the chairman's comment, but I think a dialogue between people who are neighbors and live with each other every day is different than the dialogue between a neighbor and a person trying to extract every last penny out of a development. Is really a different process. As to your question, my tennis court is several hundred feet and behind a large structure, as opposed to where the street is, where the proposed tennis court is. It is back behind a very large structure, behind a lot of plantings, several hundred feet away, and much closer to Cooper's Neck Pond if you look at the Google Maps.
Right.
And I think that's where it should be. I think tennis courts are a bit of a nuisance, but a valuable one, economically valuable one. And that economic value should not be imposed on the cost of your neighbors. And I think we have followed that model.
Okay.
Having lived with a tennis court a few hundred feet from our main house, I will tell you, when it is in use, it is noisy. It is noisy both for the tennis balls, but more importantly, it is noisy for the involvement and perhaps happy involvement of the people who are participating in their tennis games when they are on the court. So I do think there is a noise element. Now, a couple hundred feet and a structure in between probably mitigates that noise pollution. 35 feet from a street or 55 feet perhaps from another house is not much of a mitigation factor.
Well, I appreciate your answering my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So can we have a motion to close the meeting, to close the hearing again for all purposes, case number 3121, 199 Cooper's Neck Lane?
So moved.
And all in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, so let's move on to case number 3117, and our apologies to Linda Riley. If she's there, we're ready for case number 3117, 104 Post Crossing.
I think Linda's been here the whole time.
Yes, I left her in.
I can't. Oh, okay.
There you go. You're on.
Okay. My camera's not working.
We can see you. We can see you.
Okay. Okay. All right. My name is Linda Riley. I'm an attorney. I'm representing the owners of the house that is the subject of this application, which is a pretty famous house, actually. It's right on the corner of Elm Street and Post Crossing in a neighborhood that's in a historic district and well known actually for having very large, elaborate historic houses on what are usually small lots. The zoning district here is 7.5, which is the smallest, tightest zoning district in the village, as you well know. This particular lot is larger than a 7.5 district would ordinarily allow. It's just over 20,000 square feet. And as a result, and it is a corner lot, which I've already pointed out, having a significant amount of frontage 150 feet on Elm Street, as well as 150 feet on Post Crossing. Because of the size of the lot, the setback for a detached accessory structure is 15 feet. Had it been less than 20,000 square feet, it would have been 10 feet. Under the old R75 district, when those the older regulations were in effect, it was 10 feet. So there is a sort of historic precedence for historic structures of about 10 feet from side and rear yard lines. There are really only two 5-foot setback requests here. There is a proposed garage, and by the way, there is no garage on the property now, never has been a garage. My client simply wants to build a 1-car proposed garage accessed from an existing curb cut from Elm Street. It will extend the driveway a bit toward the back of the property. And he's proposing to situate the proposed garage so that it will have a 10-foot setback from the southerly property line and a 10-foot setback from the westerly property line. Those property lines are rear and side yard setbacks. It's the same 15 feet is applicable to each, and the same 10 feet is what's proposed. Although there are other relief requests that appear in the application, they're really very technical and weren't even included in the notice. Such things as leaving the rear yard open or the required side yard open. In any event, the easterly elevation of the garage, which you all have plans and surveys that were submitted with this. The easterly elevation of the garage, which is the front of the garage, faces Elm Street. It is simply a garage door. It is no more than 14 feet wide. And it has a garage door in the front and nothing else from looking from Elm Street. Toward the back of on the northerly elevation, facing the house that's on the premises, there is a side door entering into the garage and one side window. The garage is clearly designed as a garage for the storage of one motor vehicle. There is also in the same building a proposed bathroom. There is no access to the bathroom directly from the interior of the garage. Rather, there is a door from the backyard of the property behind the house that leads into the bathroom, which is really nothing more than a bathroom with a tiny foyer. The foyer is there to just prevent people who are outside looking straight into the bathroom when the door is open. So the combined garage and bathroom, if you will, together are 364 square feet. Most of that, about 270 square feet of it, is that 1-car garage. The garage is really clearly intended to be a garage. There's no appreciable fenestration. There's no closet. There's no access from the inside of the garage to the bathroom. And that is the goal that the applicant has here. There is no code prohibition against having a bathroom in an accessory building. The code is geared toward regulating the gross floor area of these structures, and the space
that is enclosed is far under the 520 square feet that would be allowed. The applicant, as long as this is being built, is also proposing to have a patio, a small patio that is 156 square feet, that is adjacent to the door into the bathroom, if you will, that will be covered with a roof. It's going to have open sides. It is meant to be a small area for gathering. It'll have some furniture on it, like any porch would, but it's so small that it really won't be able to accommodate any significant number of people. Because it is covered, and only because it is covered, it also is part of the variance relief that's being requested. If it were simply a patio with people sitting on the patio, there would be no need for any relief because there would be no applicable setback. The garage is a quiet use. It's a storage facility, and a bathroom is a similarly quiet use. The only variances that are being requested are the 5-foot setback variances, which I would contend is very minimal. Moreover, the applicant is perfectly willing and happy to install very substantial landscaping between the elevation that faces the neighbor on the side to the west and the proposed pool house and the porch. Or I said pool house, it's a garage. I don't care if you call it a pool house. There's no reason why it couldn't be a bathroom or a pool house. That's not what he's building, though. He's building a garage. What he wants is a garage with a bathroom and a small porch. There is no ground floor area, no pyramid relief, no lot coverage relief, no other relief being requested. There are only 2 lots that abut this lot. The one to the south is very, very heavily screened, and I don't believe that neighbor has any objection. The neighbor to the west has submitted a letter, but I just want to point out that he has a driveway that goes the entire length of my client's property, right up against the property, that goes through the entire length. So there is a driveway that widens toward the back that is on the other side of the property line from this proposed garage and porch and bathroom. There is no other place to put a garage that wouldn't require a variance. It can't go into front yards. It can't go in the post-crossing front yard or the Elm Street front yard. And the only place to put it is really along the southern side of the property. Because it is required to have a certain amount of setback from the house, 5 feet from the house at all points, there is literally no place to put a 1-car garage of the width that's proposed any closer to the house or any closer to the front of the property, because the house is where it is and it's so close to the property line that the only way to put it in is toward the back, tucking it into the back of the lot. I also want to point out that garages tucked in the back corner of lots are very often seen in this neighborhood and other historic neighborhoods, that was sort of a traditional place to put a detached garage. In fact, the neighbor to the west has a detached garage tucked into the corner of his property at a less than 10-foot setback. And the other point about the location of this garage, or the proposed location, is that it's set behind the house and back, so it doesn't detract from the really gorgeous architecture of the house. The house was very meticulously renovated, restored several years ago. It's beautiful. It's unusually visible to the neighborhood, to the community at large, and to stick a garage any closer to the front would first of all require variance relief, but secondly detract from the presence that the house has. We also argue that the benefits sought by the applicant, a one-car garage, is a customary amenity in this area and should be permitted with granting the most minimal relief necessary, which we contend that this is. There are no environmental impacts here that are of any note. No water, no slopes, no anything else to take into consideration environmentally. It is type 2 action. And although the applicant did purchase the house recently, we would argue that it is not a self-created hardship, because when he purchased it, he carefully checked and was told that, because he knew he wanted a one-car garage when he bought the house, he was told that the applicable setback was 10 feet, which is not too surprising given the fact that, generally speaking, in that neighborhood, that is in fact the applicable setback for detached garages. Does the board have any questions, or?
So could I because of the size of the lot, he has a higher setback requirement, is that right, Linda?
That's correct.
Okay.
If it were under 20,000 square feet, it would be a 10-foot setback that's required, which is what he's proposing.
It is big, the lot, and it's a pretty, they did it, whoever the person bought it from, they did a nice job of making that corner nice.
My client agrees, and he wants to respect one of the reasons he bought it is because it's a beautiful, historic looking home. And he wants to respect that and wants to maintain it basically the way it is, with the one addition, again, tucked out of the way of a one-car garage.
Linda, are you able to share the site plan with us?
I am so sorry. I'm not able to do that tonight. I wish I could. The only thing I can do is hold up the survey to the camera, but I don't think it's gonna work well. So I'm sorry that I just don't have that technical ability to do it tonight.
It's okay. I mean, we all have it in our packets. Okay, do any other board members have any questions or comments?
I do. I just wonder, and I'm not sure of the primary setbacks, but if the garage were attached to the house, would you need a variance?
Well, no, but the house, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but the house is very elaborately it's not an up and down house. It's got very elaborate architecture, a lot of embellishments on the facade on all sides. There is a Bilko door that sticks out from the house alongside the driveway that, you know, we're extending to accommodate the garage. And I don't think it is feasible to attach it to the house, and it would be a shame to do that.
I think if anybody could do it, it would be Brian Brady. He's such a good architect, and this is a beautiful house. But if it could be attached to the house and you need no variances, I think that's an avenue that should be at least pursued in sketch form.
Well, Brian Brady wished he could be here tonight. He's traveling, unfortunately. The same goes for my client, who is also traveling and would have liked to have been participating in this meeting. You know, I'm sure that I can get Brian to explain at the next meeting why he could not attach the garage to the house. He told me it was not feasible to do architecturally, and maybe we could put this over till the next meeting. I'll have the technical ability to post the site plan and the plans up on the screen, and have the architect go over that with you.
Well,
yeah, that'd be great. I mean, there's no setback lines on the survey here, so you know, what I'm suggesting may not be feasible, but I would love to hear from Brian on why we can't attach it to the house and negate the need for a variance.
I think that does not respect the house itself. It's in a historic street that just extends, it ruins the facade.
That's what, yeah.
Completely disagree, especially if it's held back, you know, in the southwest corner, but moved slightly to the east and over. As Ms. Riley points out, it is an eccentric house with lots of ins and outs, and I believe Brian Brady's talents could make it look beautiful and like it had always been there.
Okay, so we're going to hold it over anyway until December, and hopefully Brian can join us. Is that okay, Linda?
That is okay, yes. And I'll have him explain it. I'll have some screen sharing ability. I apologize for that.
It's no problem. Julia, do you have any questions or comments?
Not anymore this evening.
Jolie, does anybody from the neighborhood, or does anybody from the public wish to speak?
Yes, looks like there is a neighbor here. Mr. Holmes is coming in. Mr. Holmes, you can unmute and turn on your camera, please. Thank you. We can see you. Go ahead.
Great. Hopefully you can hear me. Hi, everybody. Hello.
Yes, loud and clear.
My name is Max Holmes. My wife Marion and I live next door at 92 Post Crossing. We first found out about this application this past Thursday. We didn't have any prior notice that there had been an application of the building department that had been rejected. And so we quickly wrote a letter, a 2-page letter, which I think you have. I think everybody here is, or maybe you don't have it, but we certainly submitted it to the ZBA a couple of days ago. I think everybody knows that Post Crossing is an unusual, unique, beautiful street with a lot of historic homes. And unlike some of the historic streets where you drive by, this is a place where people walk by they from the village. It's readily accessible, as you know, to the village, very close. We're in strong objection to this proposal. And when we first read it, it looked like it was a garage, and we thought maybe that might be reasonable. And then we kept reading and we kept reading and we kept looking at it. And then we saw in the bottom right-hand corner of the survey, it says proposed garage / pool house. And I listened to Ms. Riley's presentation. She said the word garage 26 times. And yet 2/3 of the way through her presentation, she burst out the word pool house, right? This is really a pool house. And so in our letter, we set forth the objections, right? The first is, if this was really a garage, it doesn't need to be in the corner, right? It can be closer. It doesn't have to be attached to the house. It could be closer to Elm Street. It would be a perfectly fine garage, and it wouldn't impinge on our property. And if the other neighbor doesn't care, maybe that would be fine if it was really a garage, right? The shape, the shape of this thing, a garage normally would be wide for an opening, and then maybe it's a square, right? This is twice as deep as it is wide for the car to open. That's because it's a pool house. It's not a garage. And then we find out that it has a bathroom, which was not on the site plan and not on the survey. I've never heard of a garage with a bathroom. It has a patio next to it. Of course, the patio's for pool. And by the way, the survey didn't show a roof to the patio. So now we'll be able to look at a roof of a patio, right, from our own home. Right? So it's the wrong place for a garage. That's not where you would put a garage. It's the wrong shape for a garage. A garage wouldn't normally have a patio. A garage certainly wouldn't have a bathroom. We're concerned that, you know, a pool house could cause additional drainage onto our driveway, which Ms. Riley said is right next to where this is. There's a hedge between us, but that's it. From our point of view, our house is right on the line, right after the driveway. So we're about maybe 20 feet from the property line. And so we're gonna hear, obviously there's always some noise from a pool, right? But we're gonna hear substantially more noise from a pool. We're gonna see this structure, the pool house and the patio, from our backyard. We're gonna see it from our porch. We're gonna see it from our kitchen. We're gonna see it from our family room. And then when you get to the second story of our house, which again is a very historic house, 1905, we're gonna, there are 2 bedrooms, one of which our grandchildren stay in, that will look directly onto, it already looks at the pool, right? But it will look directly onto the roof of this patio, and it will look directly onto the pool house. We don't even know how many stories it is, how high it's gonna be. We don't know any of those things, right? Because they weren't presented as part of the plan. So there's gonna be additional noise. There's gonna be a complete change in the views from our house. There will be changes in the views from the street as people walk by. And there will certainly be an erosion of privacy because our second story windows will look right into this entire pool house area. So we would submit that this is a burden on our property, and the fact that some mysterious unnamed person said that the setback was 10 feet, I don't even know how to respond to that. I'm a lawyer. I don't even know how to respond to that. That some mystery person at town hall gave this gentleman the wrong information prior to his purchase of the house. He knew this was in a historic district, right? I was listening to some of the prior cases, and clearly this doesn't meet a bunch of the criteria, right? Ms. Riley said it was only a 5-foot setback, but then she said that there are a bunch of other quote unquote technical variances that weren't even mentioned in her submission. So I'd like to know what those are, right? I mean, she says it's only 5 feet, but then there are a bunch of other technical variances. So I think this is a substantial variance request. It's clearly self-created, right? It's clearly self-created. There's a big circular driveway for a lot of cars, and there are a lot of cars there, right? So having a one-car garage isn't going to help with a bunch of cars. But this is a pool house. We know that this is a pool house, and it's been confessed now both in writing and verbally to be a pool house. There's no hardship to value, right? This is already an expensive property, beautifully renovated by the prior owner. A benefit can be achieved without a variance. If this was really a garage, I bet they could build one. I'm not an architect, but I bet they could. If it was just a garage, they could probably build it closer to Elm Street without a variance and without damaging the views if they did a nice job with the historical nature of the property. So I think that, or we think that this will change the character of the neighborhood, and it will certainly change the views and the noise and the privacy of our own home. So with that, I'll stop, but you can refer to my letter for more details.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes.
May I just respond to a couple of things quickly? I know it's a long meeting that you have and it's adjourned anyway, but I just want to point out that full sets of plans were submitted with the application and are available to review at Town Hall. But we will also reach out to the neighbor and show him the plans and demonstrate to him why it is a garage. And I think that'll be helpful during the time that's from now to then. I also want to say covering the patio is in some ways going to achieve a diminution of any kind of noise. An open air, if there are people sitting there, is going to be noisier than if there's a cover. The purpose of the cover is not to do that. It's simply to have a shaded area for people to sit. And it is very, very small. I don't know what a pool house is. There's no definition for a pool house in the code. What this is actually is a building that's intended to store a car, and in a side door, not at all connected to the garage, there is going to be a small bathroom, which is permitted in the village. There's no prohibition against it. There's no variance for it. And what he just referred to about the other variances, quote unquote, they are listed in my application. There's nothing being pulled out of the air. It's just that there are other requirements that sort of double back on the code. There's a certain setback requirement, and then there are other provisions that say the side yard setback has to be kept clear and open to the sky above, etc. It's all the same thing, really. And one other thing I wanted to say that I think will make Mr. Holmes maybe feel better is that my client does have pool equipment right now that it's at a conforming setback, but it is a noise generator, and he is planning on relocating that in the basement. So that will help to reduce and alleviate some noise. He is also planning some landscaping along the common boundary line right there. So I'll leave it, the rest of my comments for next time and for Mr. Brady.
Linda, were you saying that the pool equipment would be relocated to the basement in the house?
I believe so. I understood that to be the case.
Okay.
I don't think that's allowed with the venting requirements.
Oh, no? Okay.
It's not in my experience. I could be wrong.
Okay, I'll check with the architect about that. Well, you are.
Well, we'll see him in December.
Yeah.
I would just comment, I listened to 4 different prior submissions, and 2 of them had pool houses. I think everyone in Southampton knows what a pool house is, right?
Not to mention the fact that if we do end up agreeing that it is a pool house can't be further than 25 feet from a pool in the village.
I don't actually think that's true.
I can pull up my screen and show you the
No, you
code.
can't. It's supposed to be that, you can't have a pool house that's too far from the pool, but
Yeah.
we don't have that variance request. Okay, so can I have a motion to adjourn 3117, case number 3117, Post Crossing LLC 104 Post Crossing for all purposes?
So moved.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great. We'll see, Linda, we'll see you in December.
Okay, you'll see me in another minute.
Or we will see you for
Are
case
you-
311874 White Street LLC, 74 White Street.
No, the one after that, I'm doing. I'll leave now.
I'll pull you out.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Jolie, will you let the applicant in with respect to case number 311874 White Street?
Sure, one moment. Let me just pull out everyone from the last application. Medhat Alam is coming in. Okay, you can unmute, sir. There you go.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
I don't know if you can see us or you can't see us.
We can
Yes,
see
we
you
can
both
see you.
now.
So we own the property in 74 what's this?
White Street.
White Street, which is has a CO for two separate commercial use office space upstairs and downstairs. The upstairs was rented a few years ago to an older lady who's an art dealer in the city, and she has her business in the city and I believe in Southampton. And at one point when she had treatment for cancer right before COVID, and then COVID came and she started spending some nights in the property upstairs. And over time, she basically more or less started living upstairs. And we would like to get, we don't want to throw her in the street because of her situation. And we would like to get to a dual use or something like that, where upstairs would become residential and downstairs will continue to be office. And that would be helpful to her and to us also, because the building is an old building and it's grandfather before the handicap law. So it does not have access for handicap and almost impossible to do it without destroying the building. That's all what I have to say. I'm not very
very succinct.
Yeah.
Do any board members have any questions or comments?
So this is a change of use variance?
Yes, ma'am.
But
It doesn't,
other than-
is there
Yeah,
like
other than the
fire
change of use,
regulations?
Yeah, you're not changing the house in any way, you're just changing.
Absolutely none. We are not moving walls. We are not adding anything. It's always had two separate electric and two separate gas meters. We're not doing anything except just making her live there rather than get kicked out.
Is there, is there fire marshal issues? I don't know anything about this, but
We are happy to have the fire marshal come and inspect it once.
I don't know. All I'm saying is when you make a change of use where it's residential and it's on a higher floor, there may be a consideration. I don't know.
I think the fire marshal is the one who caught her sitting out there in the yard and asked her, and she told him honestly what's happening. And he went up and he said, just change the, he actually the one who told us to go ahead, do the change of use.
Oh,
Jeff, is there anything else that would need to be done? I mean, I don't know that the board is going to have any issue with allowing a change of use when there's no change in the appearance or structure of the house.
We will
And,
absolutely do nothing inside or outside. It is as is.
Chairman, was that a question to me? I didn't hear the name.
Yes,
Did
I
you
mean,
say
would they
Jeff?
need
Yeah,
to
the-
revise their CFO? Would they need to have the building department inspect the second
Well-
floor and make sure it's code compliant with respect to a residence versus a commercial
Sure.
use.
Right, this board would determine whether or not the criteria for special exception use would allow for this grant to be made, but then the building department would review to make sure that it complies with all other applicable codes.
Well, what
And we'll be
comes
happy to
first?
comply with anything they request us to do.
Would the building department make the determination first? In order for us to be able to consider it?
No, they need not make that determination first. That if this board decides that there could be a special exception use granted, they still have to, that doesn't mean that any other applicable code would go away. They still have to comply with all other applicable codes. So they would have to apply with the residential provisions that would be applicable with respect to this change.
Mhm.
Luke, do you have any questions or concerns?
So the plan that's provided with the file, it appears as if it's been an apartment in the past.
I do
Right.
not know. I bought it as is. We did not move single wall. We did not, I just
Sure.
bought it.
Yeah, I mean, it was built as a house, you know,
It was a
whenever it was
house.
built.
Yeah.
Right. So you don't need to, you're not changing anything upstairs. You're not adding, this eat-in kitchen is already there. The powder room, the bathroom, the egress is already there.
It was just like that, yes.
The staircase downstairs goes down to an enclosed vestibule.
So the stairs from upstairs goes down to, yeah, to a foyer, like a small foyer, and then an
Mhm.
outdoor.
I mean, it seems that it would have to be inspected by the building inspector, but it seems as if it conforms to residential code.
Thank you.
Jeff, do you have any questions or concerns? Jeff?
I do not, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, then I'd motion to close the application for all purposes, to close case number 3118 74 White Street. And then we'll talk about it at the work session, but I'm not sure I see any issues with this.
So moved.
Mr. Chairman, I don't, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I just didn't know if you asked if there were any neighbors.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, Jody, I
We send the
didn't-
mailing to the neighbors.
There's no hands up. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to be heard on this application? No hands. You can motion.
Okay, so motion to close for all purposes, case number 3118 74 White Street, LLC 74 White Street. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in
Oh,
favor?
I think Go ahead.
Second, whatever. Aye.
When would we expect to hear the resolution?
Probably by the December public hearing.
Okay. Thank you. Do we need to do anything in the interim?
No.
Okay.
Do we find out by attending the public hearing, or do you notify us by mail?
We don't notify you.
Yeah, I think it's by attending the public hearing. You'll see it on the agenda for decision, but I do think you'll have to check in via Zoom.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Sure, thank you. Okay, so let's move on, Jolie, when you're ready, to case number 3123, Stephen W. and Melissa K. Shapiro, 17 Toilsome Place.
Chairman, I'm going to step aside for just a minute.
Okay, and I believe it was Linda Riley said she was coming in for this application, correct? Yes. Okay, Linda Riley is coming in as a panelist.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you, Linda.
I assume you want me to wait for Julia to come back?
Yeah, could you wait 1 minute?
Yeah.
Be back shortly. Thank you.
Are we taking a break?
We're waiting for you.
Shall I start?
Yes, please.
Okay. I am here representing Stephen Shapiro and Melissa Shapiro, who own a home at the corner of Toilsome Place and Toilsome Lane. Another case with 2 front yards. The house in this case faces Toilsome Place, which is a cul-de-sac. And there is already a small dipping pool, I guess they call it, or a plunge pool that is 12 by 16 in dimensions. It's there on the property now. You can't see it from either road, and certainly not from Toilsome Place, because it is behind 2 hedges, one at the front property line and another hedge that is in front of the existing pool that extends from the front of the house, the fence and the hedge from the front of the house over to the garage. And this pool is tucked in between the house and the garage. The new pool is going to be in exactly the same location. The plunge pool will be pulled out, and it will be in line with the front of the house, not any closer to Toilsome Place than the house is. And it will still be behind hedging and fencing. So it shouldn't be visible from Toilsome Place, which, as I said, is a cul-de-sac with only a couple of houses on it. The new pool will be the same width as the existing pool, but a bit longer, and the longer is the point. It is proposed to be 12 by 38, 12 feet wide by 38 feet long, which will enable the owners to actually swim in the pool, which is their goal here. The property is in an R 12.5 district, and it is constrained by the 2 front yards, or else we probably wouldn't need to be here for this variance relief. The relief that we're requesting is from the required 40-foot setback from the street, because a swimming pool and its accessory structure has to be 10 feet farther back than the house setback. The house is set back 32.9 feet, and this proposal is to keep it at the same setback as the house at 32.9 feet. In what functions as a side yard. It's on the side of the house, between the house and the garage. So therefore, the ask is 7.1 feet. The variance is 7.1 feet. We submit that the grant of the variance will not cause an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood. The pools are a very, very common amenity in this neighborhood. There are other corner lots on this block, on this corner with pools. And it is not visible from the street, and will continue not to be visible from the street. It is the minimum request that we can make. We're not asking for any rear yard setback. In fact, the clients might have liked to have had a 40-foot long pool, but they were persuaded to keep it at 38 feet because that eliminated any need to ask for a rear yard variance and because it kept it from behind the front line of the house, which seemed like the most minimal relief we could request. The benefit sought by the applicant is to be able to swim, to be able to swim laps basically as much as possible. And there is no other place to locate this pool other than where it is proposed to be located. We submit that this is not a substantial variance in the whole context of the property. The fact that it is to the side of the house, that it is set back as far as the house is, that it is a tiny cul-de-sac, and will not interfere with anybody's enjoyment of their property. That is essentially the application. It's a pretty simple one. I can't hear you.
Well, I wanted.
Any board members have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I went and tried to see what was going on back there, but I see this property as being very maxed out in terms of what's on the property. And I think I see where they want to put the pool, but I feel like they have populated the lot with every possible thing.
Well, there's no coverage variance requested.
Well,
And the other structures all have COs. There's no change being proposed on any of the other structures.
yeah, but
And there is,
when you look from Toilsome Place, you can't put anything in the front yard, right?
you cannot.
So we're looking at this I guess it's north. Is that correct? Yes.
Yes.
Is completely covered with all kinds of things. Too many things. And the lot line, this house is substantial on a not so big piece of property. And I do feel that I think it's excessive. I can't tell you. I don't know how you could fix it. I'm not proposing anything, but I found I couldn't possibly imagine putting anything else on here.
Well, as I said, there's no variance relief requested other than that one front yard setback. Everything else has COs. Nothing else is being proposed to change. And by the way, the house on the other side, to the north, on the other side of the garage here, is far more substantial. It's a much more imposing house than this one is.
No, Linda, I don't care about what the other house is. I'm really only on this application.
Okay, well, I'm addressing the
I just like
character
to
of the
deal with the
neighborhood.
property as it's presented. What's
Okay.
around it? Southampton is full of, like, on either side, who knows what anymore. It's not to me an argument that is convincing.
Well, one of the criteria is, will the grant of the variance cause an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood? And that is what I was addressing. What's what I was intending to address. That I don't think there is any demonstrable undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood.
Linda, can I ask you, I'm just looking at the survey and maybe there's a simple explanation, but why can't the pool be located further to the west?
Further to the west, that's the backyard.
Garage.
Oh, there's a garage there.
Yeah, I'm
No,
Where
no,
the
left
patio
on the
is?
drawing would be west.
west.
Where the
there's
patio is?
West, I mean, just, okay, if you're looking at Toilsome Place,
Yes,
moving the pool closer to the rear yard.
okay.
boundary.
I would have to request a rear yard variance
Why?
because I believe the rear yard setback is 30 feet. the required setback is 30 feet.
Yeah, but I might not be reading the survey correctly. It doesn't look like that's where the pool is. There's something there that says slate stepping stone walkway.
Oh, right, there is a walkway there where the pool, that's where the pool is going. The pool, the new pool is going over the slate stepping stone walkway.
Okay, so that's the 30-foot. It's a 30-foot rear yard setback, and so that's what you're showing there, that it's going to the 30.7 feet.
Yes, it's going to be at a setback of 30.7 feet.
And what is the 20.9 feet referring to directly underneath that?
Directly underneath that, I believe that's referring to, no, it's going to be, I'm sorry. I said the wrong thing. It is going to be 20.9 feet, the setback. The pool now, the little dipping pool, which is inside the footprint of the proposed pool, is at a setback of 30.7 feet. The required setback there on the side yard is 20 feet. Sorry, I misspoke. So we tried to keep it within the required setback on that side. If you think it's more appropriate to move it back further, I can certainly talk to the clients about that.
Well, I'm having a little bit of a challenge reading the lines, because you're saying that the setback there is 30 feet.
No, it's proposed to be 20.9 feet. There is an arrow
I
there
think I see
on
it
the
now.
survey.
30.7 is what's there, and now it's proposed to be 20.9. So the
Correct.
setback is,
The required setback is 20 feet there.
okay, so it could go back another 0.9 if it mattered to everybody.
If it mattered, yeah.
Julia, do you have any questions? Julia?
I'd like to know about moving it to the west. That's my only question.
Well, I can talk to them about doing that, but it would require, I think, posting a different variance request.
I'm not sure. It's a smaller variance request. So I don't know that you'd need to repost. Jeffrey, I don't know that they would need to repost if it's a smaller request, would they?
If it's a lesser of the same type of variance, then no, they would not need to repost.
Well, it'd be a lesser variance from the front yard, but now we'll be asking for a side yard variance. Is all I'm saying. I'm happy. Look, I'm happy to take it up with my clients and ask them, how far back do you think it's appropriate to push the pool?
Well, let us talk at the work session. At first, I just thought there's obviously 0.9 feet, that you could go back, to minimize the 30.2.9 front yard setback.
Right. Well, that's less than a foot, though.
Yeah, no, I agree. I may not listen. Let us talk at the work session and see. I mean, we are always concerned about, the minimum variance to accomplish the applicant's goals.
Well, we worked hard to get there. I believe the applicants might be actually waiting to speak.
Could I ask a question first?
Oh, of course.
What is the distance, because I can't find this on here, between the slate, between the house, the pool, and then the garage is right near the pool too, right? They box in the pool. Do you know what the measurement is?
I could scale it
I'm
off.
taking off with my ruler. It looks like 5 feet.
On both sides there?
Yeah, north and south of the pool.
Which is required.
I would hope so.
Susan, did you have more questions? I mean, the idea that it's no closer to Toilsome Place than the house is, you know, to the applicant's credit and benefit. And, you know, Toilsome Place is a less traveled street than many other.
Just feel like there's like congestion on the north side, you know, the house, 5 feet, the pool, 5 feet, the garage, and there's a pool house too.
Well, it's a function of the 2 front yards and the long, narrow shape of the lot.
I agree, but that's what it was. That's how they, you know, the house was built. And then now we've got all these extra things.
You know, once again, my clients insist that they were careful to check out that the pool could be enlarged before they bought the house.
It just, we can't be accountable
Well,
for real estate agents' promises. Sorry.
Hearing that a few times. What does that mean when people are saying that?
Well, they're saying they're arguing that it's not a self-created hardship in the sense that they did what they thought was their due diligence to make sure that it would accommodate what they wanted to accommodate. And they took out.
I guess my question more directly, and I didn't mean to interrupt you. I didn't know if you were finished. Are you saying that somebody suggested to them that there wasn't a 40-foot front yard setback here?
Yes, I am suggesting that.
No, that's wrong.
I know, I wasn't there, you know, but they insisted that that was the case.
They do have a few feet before they hit the 40 feet mark. I mean, they can make the pool 2 feet longer, but you know, they do already have a pool, which is,
yes,
you know, more than the previous application today. That has, if you turn this survey to the right, is a very similar request.
Mm-hmm.
They do
No,
have
my
a pool.
point was only, Linda, I wish they had spoken to you. I mean, you would have told them. But anyway, Luke, do you have any other questions about this?
No, I don't. Thank you.
So Linda, if the applicants would like to speak, we'd be more than happy to hear from them.
Linda, are they in the attendees? I don't see anyone. Please raise.
Okay. They asked for a link and I thought they were attending. Perhaps they're not there. I don't know.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see them in the pool of attendees.
Okay.
Is anyone still in the pool of attendees at this point in the night?
Actually, there is still some attendees.
A whole lot of them.
Okay, so do we want to close this for all purposes, or do we want to leave it open for all purposes?
I think we have to leave it open, maybe.
Okay, so can I have a motion to leave case number 312317 Toilsome Place open for all purposes, but adjourn it for this evening? Can I have a second?
A second.
And then all in favor, Julia?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And Luke?
Yeah, aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you, Linda. We'll see you on this application as well in December.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're on to our next case number 3104, Town of Southampton, 51 Pond Lane.
Okay. Can you raise your hand if you're here? I believe it's Anthony Curcio.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Curcio, you're in if you'd like to unmute and turn on your camera. Thank you.
Good evening.
Okay, we're ready when you are, Mr.
Okay.
Curcio.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the zoning board, Anthony Curcio, Brown Altman and DeLeo LLP, located at 538 Broad Hollow Road, Suite 301, Melville, New York, 11747. My firm represents one of the applicants, the Southampton African American Museum, or SAM, a DBA under the East End African American Museum and Center for Excellence in association with the Pierce Concert Action Committee. The village and the town of Southampton, as discussed previously, are also applicants. Together, proposed development as provided in the site plan previously provided includes, but is not limited to, the restoration of the former Pierce Concert House in its original location, construction of a new visitor center on the western portion of the site, and additional site improvements. Just a little housekeeping, please be advised that all mailing, posting, and notice requirements have been completed pursuant to the village code. Application has been before the board for approximately over 6 months, and as the board knows, the site plan and requested variance relief has changed several times, taking into consideration suggestions of the board and the recent change in the Village of Southampton code. The following is a summary of the events leading us to today's hearing. On May 27, 2021, we initially presented our application to the board during a public hearing and discussed the application at length, providing background information, letters of support, expert testimony, and the 5-factor balancing test that a zoning board shall consider when determining whether a variance shall be granted or denied. On June 10, 2021, the applicant provided responses to this board's questions, exhibits, and a revised site plan to the ZBA clerk with copies that were provided to the board. At the June 24, 2021 public hearing, the applicant presented evidence in connection with the applicant's museum status and charter issued by the state of New York. Subsequently, the applicant was notified that the village was in the process of amending certain sections of the village code that would directly impact the application before the board. As such, public hearings dated August 26, 2021 and September 23, 2021 were adjourned to allow for the amendment to the code to be filed with the Secretary of State and take effect. At the October 19, 2021 work session, it was discussed and agreed by the applicant and the board that the matter would be removed from the calendar and re-noticed to the public in order to avoid any confusion in connection with the amendment to the code and consequently changes in the variance relief requested. On or about October 28, 2021, the applicant filed the latest version of the site plan, which the board has before them today. Further hard copies of the plan were also provided to the board on or about October 29, 2021. On November 9th, 2021, the town of Southampton passed a resolution supporting a submission of a site plan by the village and the applicant, in addition to supporting the reconstruction of the homestead. This was provided to the board on November 16th, 2021. This was requested by the board previously in order for the board to feel more comfortable rendering a decision. However, during the November 16th, 2021 work session, the board stated they were not comfortable with how the resolution was worded, in particular that a specific site plan was not referenced. Unfortunately, to the best of my knowledge, I don't believe the plan referred to in the resolution is the site plan before you today. However, the town was subsequently provided, and I have confirmed that they have received the site plan before you today. Further, as I technically do not represent the town, I am unable to opine or take questions in regard to the town's intentions when issuing the resolution. However, while understanding the board's hesitancy to provide a decision without a specific site plan referenced in the town's resolution, and the fact that not all approvals have been obtained, we respectfully request that when the time does come for the board to render its decision, it does so on the condition that the town provide the ZBA another resolution adopting the fully approved final site plan for the site with specific reference to the final site plan approved. This is, of course, subject to the town of Southampton agreeing to such conditions. In accordance with the public notice, we are requesting the following variance relief today before the board. Section 116-9A1E, we are requesting that a cellar and heating be allowed in the original historic Pierce Concert House when the code does not permit, in order to have a place to install mechanicals so the building can be climate controlled all year round. Section 116-14G, minimum driveway width. Request to allow access driveway width of 20 feet where 24 is required. This request is de minimis and will be discussed in further detail by Bob Nelson, project engineer. Section 116-9AB1, an accessory structure not to exceed 520 square feet. We are requesting that the original historic Pierce Concert House remain at 570 square feet, when only 520 square feet is permitted by code. Section 116-9AD, accessory structure not to exceed 16 feet in height. We are requesting to allow the existing height of the original historic Pierce Concert House to stay at 24 feet in height, where a maximum of 16 is permitted. And finally, section 116-9A3, accessory buildings not to be placed within front yard, to allow an eastern front yard setback of 36.9 feet where 50 feet is required. As discussed on numerous occasions, the property was granted a variance previously on December 15, 2016, granting a floor area variance of 570 square feet and granting a front yard setback of 36.9 feet. This was when the homestead was classified as the principal structure on the property. The applicant was recently granted approval by the Board of Trustees for a special use permit application for museum use at the property on November 9th, 2021. Due to the change in use and the proposed site plans provided, the visitor center is now considered the principal structure, while the homestead is now considered the accessory structure. As such, the applicant is now required to obtain the same variances for the homestead that were previously granted for floor area and front yard setback when the structure was considered a principal structure, but now is an accessory structure. With me today to present testimony and further support the application is Bob Nelson of Nelson Pope and Voorhees, project engineer. Also to take questions is Chick Voorhees if needed. Bob is going to get into more detail regarding the gross floor area ratio, which was a concern also of the board at the work session. And Bob will also be discussing the relief requested in connection with the width of the driveway. Bob?
Mr. Curcio, could you just, this is Susan Stevenson.
Yes.
Are you, I don't seem to have I was sent an email with a minuscule site plan most recently. I don't know what site plan we are referring to, which really hampers my work here.
Well, I don't know.
I've gone through all of the site plans that were given to us. They say things like May. They should have a date. You know, it's very difficult to know what's active or what. I really am at a loss. So I'm requesting a copy that I can read of whatever site plan you are referring to in this.
Site plan that you should have has a date of October 25th, 2021. You should have received that from the building department.
Well, the should have, would have, I don't have that.
3 weeks now.
I'm sorry, I'm not in charge of it. I don't have it and I'm requesting it.
I'm not in charge of it either. I submitted it already.
I can't help
I
it.
can control what happens once I submit my application.
Well, it's not up to me. All I'm telling you is I don't have it.
Okay, I'd be more than happy to share my screen if that helps.
That would be very helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Can you see it? Oh, wait. Can you see my screen?
It's small. I have a laptop. I'm not investing, you know, that's why I need a piece of paper that, okay, we're getting.
Are we getting better? Well, whatever question you have, I can zoom in on the area that you might have a question about, so. Are we gonna let Bob Nelson do his testimony before we continue?
Fine.
Good evening, members of the board. Bob Nelson, Nelson and Pope, offices of 572, excuse me, that's our old offices, 70 Maxis in Melville, New York. I'm the project engineer. Previously, there were a number of questions raised regarding the lot coverage and the driveway in the existing right-of-way that transverses the westerly property line. I would like to provide some clarity to the two questions. With respect to the lot coverage, the maximum allowable lot coverage in the R20 residential district is computed as 14% of the total lot area plus 1,500 square feet, based on section 116-11.2 of the village zoning code. Following the descriptions in the code, the proposed visitor center, existing cottage, and the to-be reconstructed homestead has a lot coverage of 6,000 square feet. The allowable is computed at 6,395 square feet. Therefore, a variance for lot coverage is not required. Note that the definition in the code of a building does not differentiate by use. A residence, pool house, garage, and museum are all handled equally under the code for lot coverage. With respect to the driveway in the 25-foot right-of-way, the right-of-way is for the benefit of the residential property at the rear of the homestead property. The owner of the residence is permitted to transverse the homestead property using the right-of-way to access their property. However, the ownership of the property underlying in the right-of-way is that of the homestead property owner. The existing driveway is used currently to access both properties. The southerly 5 feet portion of the right-of-way is currently used for utility poles and services to the residential property. It is proposed that the remaining 20 feet of the right-of-way will be reconstructed and improved with drainage. While the 25-foot right-of-way will remain, the village's site development regulations require a 24-foot wide driveway. The applicant is asking for a variance to allow a 20-foot paved driveway. The proposed reconstructed driveway exceeds the paved width of the existing driveway there now. The American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, commonly referred to as AASHTO, publication, A Policy of Geometric Design of Highways and Streets, the 11th edition, is a industry recognized design policy manual for highways and streets. The manual identifies that a 20-foot paved traveled way is sufficient for two-way traffic for vehicles traveling 40 miles an hour with a volume of less than 400 vehicles per day. The 20-foot wide driveway, therefore, is sufficient to meet the intended use of both properties. It is not anticipated that the driveway will be experiencing 40-mile-an-hour speeds or 40 vehicles per hour in traffic volume. The 20-foot width also meets the New York State Fire Code for emergency vehicle access. Additionally, the sidewalk will be signed with no parking and no parking fire zone in accordance to the code, and also to prevent individuals from parking on there and obstructing the access to the rear. During construction, the contractor will have to maintain access to the rear property, minimizing any impact. Now, obviously, when the driveway is reconstructed, there'll be occasional regrading issues, paving, so there will be some temporary disruption, but this has to be coordinated and access has to be provided to the resident in the back. This is something that'll be worked out by the contractor during construction and his construction phasing. Construction fencing will not prevent the owner of the residence from transversing to his property. If there's any other questions, I can certainly answer them.
Do any board members have any questions?
I have a question about the designation. Is it a visitor center or a museum? The nomenclature has changed, I believe, over some time. Could you explain that to us?
The building is being called a visitor center, but if you look at the floor plan, it's the exhibit area and administration. So it is in fact a museum. It's just being called a visitor center. That doesn't necessarily mean it's not a museum.
Is there a definition, or how's this working?
If I recall,
we already resolved this issue with the Board of Trustees, so we can stick with the variances at hand. That'd be great.
Well, that's.
Sorry, Mr. Curcio, I have a right to ask questions.
These questions have to do with the designation of a museum.
Mr.
which we
Curcio,
already
Mr.
established with
Curcio,
the board of trustees.
Mr.
Yes,
If I may,
yes.
thank you. In terms of the question of the structure or structures being considered as a museum, I do believe that in light of the local law that was passed and the Board of Trustees having dealt with the question of a special exception use, they have passed on the question of whether or not the buildings as constituted would be considered a museum under the code, and they have granted a permit for that purpose. So I would respectfully submit that the question of museum is not currently before this board, given that the Board of Trustees has ruled on it. That's pursuant to the resolution of the Board of Trustees dated November 9th.
Thank you.
So
the
given
overall
that,
que-
is the site subject to typical residential zoning? And are the variances requested even required?
They are, and it is subject to, excuse me one second. It is subject to residential zoning requirements. If I may, I'll give an example. I think there was one question about whether, did I go to mute or can people still hear me?
No, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. There was a question about GFA. That would not be applicable here, but that's not applicable only because if we look at the code, I think it's 116-17.1 E, that applies to dwellings. So these wouldn't be dwellings, but otherwise the residential zoning requirements would apply. They do have.
Because it's in a residential zone?
Yes. There was, I should clarify one other further point, if I may, Mr. Chairman. While I have the floor, the grant by the Board of Trustees also waived parking requirements. So that's why that is no longer before this board as well. May I just ask one question of Mr. Curcio, Mr. Chairman, just so that we can. Mr. Curcio, can you please clarify, there had been a question as to whether or not there would be a need for a wetlands permit. In the initial application, there was a checkoff box that was needed, and then the board indicated it was not needed. Have you had the opportunity, given the board's prior questioning, to follow up with your client about that? And can you explain the applicant's position right now, so we know that the answer to that from your point of view?
Absolutely.
Answer that if you would like.
Yeah, Chick can handle that, sure. Go right ahead.
Hi, good evening, board members. My name is Chick Voorhees, Nelson Pope Voorhees. I believe there was an inaccuracy in one of the prior submissions that a wetlands permit was not needed. This was based on a preliminary measurement. At this time, it has been determined that a DEC wetlands permit is needed under Article 24 of the Environmental Conservation Law. Because the village is a co-applicant in this project, a ZBA wetlands permit under village law is not required. And that precedent has been set and it's outlined in parts of the Environmental Conservation Law. So a wetlands application was submitted to the New York State DEC in July. It is pending. Their only jurisdiction is a very small corner in the northeast part of the property that involves basically the existing driveway and a little bit of the sidewalk. It's also across Pond Lane from Lake Agawam, and we don't anticipate any issues with the issuance of the permit. The state has been a little bit slow these days in processing permits, especially in the freshwater wetlands unit, but that is the current update based on your question. Thank you.
May I ask one further question for clarification, Mr. Chairman? Otherwise, I can wait.
No, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I don't know if this would be for Mr. Voorhees or for Mr. Curcio, but I understand this application is, I believe, simultaneously pending before the planning board, which has taken lead agency status. Am I correct in that?
You are correct.
So then, at this point, they have not yet made a secret determination.
That is correct.
Okay, so any ultimate determination here would not occur until after a secret is finalized and determined. Just as a point of information.
Agreed. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry to interrupt.
So to summarize, and Mr. Curcio, maybe you can respond to this. It appears that at this point, the applicant is not requesting any variances with respect to what's demarcated on the site plan as the visitor center or outdoor seating, that is all in compliance with existing Southampton Village zoning code. Is that correct?
That is correct. The current variances we're asking for deal mainly with the Pierce Concert Homestead and the width of the driveway.
With respect to the width of the driveway, the question I would have is, and I understand everything that Bob was saying, but why can't the driveway be 24 feet wide? What is it about your site plan that precludes the driveway from being 24 feet wide?
Bob, you want to answer this, or you want me to answer it?
I can answer, certainly. 5 feet of the right-of-way is taken up already, and we cannot put a driveway there. That's the utilities going back to the house. We're using the remaining portion of it for our driveway. Trying to minimize pavement on the site.
So the 4 feet that you're short in width is just consumed by a utility easement? Is that?
It's not a utility easement. They're actually physically utility poles running right up it.
Okay, understood. Do any other board members have questions or comments?
Those utility poles are between the driveway and the site, or are they along the southern? Okay, there we go. I couldn't see that. But I don't know if that necessarily answers the chairman's question. If we took our southern edge of the driveway as to remain as is, why couldn't you push 4 feet north to get the 24 feet?
We have to maintain ADA accessibility from the street up to the concert house itself and the building. Right now, what you're looking at there on the walkways, and as you can see, it's a convoluted walkway system. We're just making ADA compatible compliance in there. Pushing the roadway over.
I don't know about that, because I think if you're landing that is outside of what's labeled existing cottage with the stepping stones, if your landing was pushed further north, wouldn't you have the run to make that rise?
We can look at it further, but we spent a lot of time trying to make everything work out there. We have to get into the back. The ADA accessibility to the cottage is in the rear, obviously, not through the stones in the front.
Right, but I think I'm talking about the serpentine ramp system, which is pretty cool. And move your cursor up just a little bit. Yeah, that landing right there. If you move that up 4 feet, you really wouldn't impinge upon the cottage. You'd still have your stepping stones, and you could make up the run that you'd be losing along the southern edge of the driveway. The Sea Scout Plaza would have to move. Everything moves 4 feet upwards.
We would still, that's something we can certainly take a look at for you.
I think you can do it.
Chica, I thought at one point, and correct me if I didn't hear correctly, I thought at one point you had suggested that the visitor center required side yard setback relief. In this case, it does not.
Yes, the administration area and part of the entry has been reduced in size to ensure that we comply with the side yard setbacks.
Mr. Chairman, we reduced the overall width of the building by 2.5 feet. We took a small portion out of the exhibit area and the entry foyer.
And I would just add with respect to the driveway, usually the board is looking at variances that encroach upon side yards, rear yards, and various setbacks. In this case, the driveway width typically required is the 24 feet. But as Mr. Nelson has indicated, a lesser driveway is more than adequate to handle the driveway traffic. And just from an environmental and planning standpoint, to have a wider access and more pavement would impact the property to a greater degree. It would require more disturbance. It would visually alter the character to a greater extent from Pond Lane. It would require more drainage and potentially more grading. So I just think that it's important to kind of understand the nature of that relief. It's to reduce environmental impacts and to reduce the planning aspects, to improve the planning aspects of this as it relates to the site.
Does it have to be an impervious blacktop driveway? Couldn't you make use of the pervious pavers?
The slope of the driveway, it's about a 20-foot rise from the front of the property to the building. The slope of that driveway, the pervious pavers will have very little impact on drainage. It'll pretty much run right down them. You need a much flatter surface for the impervious surfaces to work.
And of course, this is the alignment of the existing driveway, as I'm sure you all recognize.
Julia, do you have any questions or comments?
Trying to take it all in. It's a lot of seeing the site plan in a large size is very helpful, but it's a great deal of data, and there has been significant changes, which I'm trying to fully appreciate, but I don't have additional questions at this time.
Chair, there is a hand up in the attendees. Joan Morgan McGivern would like to be heard.
Oh, absolutely. We'll hear from her. I just want to finish this
Sure.
part of the presentation, but I agree. Luke, did you have any more questions before we hear from the representative for the neighbors?
No, thank you.
Okay, certainly. Yeah, let's, if do you want to let her in, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Mhm. All right. She should be entering now. Ms. McGivern, if you're in, you can go ahead and unmute. Turn on your camera, please. Ms. McGivern, unmute, please.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Yes.
Okay. I'm still viewing Anthony Curcio's screen. Can he stop screen sharing or?
There we go.
Okay. Good evening. I'm sorry this has been a long evening for you. I'm Joan McGivern from Toomey Latham. We're representing the Klanskys at 57 Pond Lane, who, as you gathered, share the common driveway, and the Yawneys at 16 Culver Street, which share a boundary to the northwest of the subject property. This is on the agenda as a new case. I want to underscore that our clients have had received no notice of any of these changes. It's only through the serendipity of their having legal counsel that that we've been checking the ZBA calendar weekly, that we were even aware of this hearing, which I think doesn't reflect well on the process. And certainly we'd submit the board doesn't have jurisdiction to hear this matter tonight. We also want to note and underscore that since the inception of this application and its myriad variations, there's been no denial of an application by the Board of Building Department. And it's just that we can't rely on applicants to self-report. As you heard tonight, they modified the visitor center to comply, or they're representing they're complying with side yard setbacks. We don't know. I mean, that's what the building department is there for, to provide their expertise in that department. It shouldn't be a guessing game, and the board shouldn't be burdened with having to guess either. So we also submit that because there's no denial letter in the file, that the board respectfully doesn't have jurisdiction. I've already noted that some of the proposed variances, I personally reviewed the file this morning, and the noticed variances in the agenda are not in the file. So as a member of the public, if we had gone to look at the file, all we would have seen was the October 25th site plan and the resolution from the Southampton Township, which doesn't refer to what site plan is being approved in the whereas clause, and certainly doesn't refer to a visitor center in the resolved clauses. And I'm sorry, I'm rushing because I know it's been a long evening for you. The variances that have been proposed concern the reconstruction of the homestead, now relabeled as an accessory structure. They're actually asking the ZBA to overrule itself. The ZBA already approved these variances, or some of them, as a principal structure, and now they're asking you to approve them as an accessory structure. We submit that it's contradictory and sets a bad precedent. Assuming that you want to entertain the notice variances, at least insofar as they were noticed in the agenda, we still have several problems with them. As I noted, first and foremost, the structure that is currently being called an accessory structure was previously found by the ZBA, the Certificate of Occupancy, and the Architectural Review and Historic Preservation Board to be a principal structure. So there are at least 3 outstanding documents that treat it as a principal structure. Clearly, these variances are necessary because it's a principal structure, and they're significant. The height variance of 8 feet is a 33% variance. It also needs a cellar and heating. I mean, what indicia do you need for a principal residence more clearly than heating and a cellar? I appreciate that it's to preserve the reconstruction of the principal structure, but it's still playing games with the concept of principal and accessory structure. I've already mentioned, and you've already mentioned, that the town resolution we feel is inadequate to support what they're asking you to do. And I think in light of the hour, I'll stop. If the board has any questions, we'd ask that you keep the record open so that we could submit formal written comments.
We are going to hold it open for all purposes. We agree with you 100% that we do not want to move forward until we receive a full report from the building department with respect to a letter of denial and detailed reasons for the denial and verification as to all necessary variances being requested. And that's something that we're asking for, by the way, with respect to all cases before us. So we'll get there, but this is one of those cases where we are awaiting the building department to weigh in, as you suggested. One question I have for you is, what is your, as a neighbor, what is your position with respect to the need for a variance for the width of the driveway?
Well, this evening was the first time we actually heard that there was going to be some consideration as to their access during construction. So obviously, at some point, we would ask that there be construction protocols in place to provide them access, but they do have a 25-foot right of way, and 25 feet is not 20 feet. I don't want to belabor that. Again, given the hour.
Okay, so why don't I entertain a motion to adjourn for all purposes? Case number 3104, Town of Southampton, 51 Pond Lane.
So moved.
And do we have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And aye. That was an aye from you, Luke. Okay, so we'll reconvene. We'll talk about this at the work session, and we'll reconvene in December.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we covered everything. Can I have a motion to?
Could I just ask, do any of you have an October readable site plan with numbers on it?
No,
No.
not me.
Okay, so, I don't know what to do about this kind of thing, but I can't really work. They sent us an email with this little tiny thing. We need.
No, it's going to have to be in our packet for the pickup.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought, am I crazy? I went through all these and I would like to also ask that there be an accurate date, like it would be, he's saying October something. It was an email. They need to be labeled so we know what they're talking about. And obviously that just hasn't happened, and I'm surprised by that. So thank you.
We're on the same page. I agree entirely. I picked up my materials on time, and I did not have a.
It was an email from Derek that had this little tiny thing that was unintelligible. I wrote on the sheet, unintelligible. When I was going through my file, I found it.
No, and it has to be date stamped by the building department.
That seems to be a big problem. A lot of our stuff is not date stamped.
Okay, so I'll motion to adjourn this public hearing, October 18th, 2021.
November 18th.
Oh, November. Sorry. Wow.
Okay, Mark, you did a good job. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.